on 104 to 107, and we are, as always, broadcasting live from SABC HQ at Radio Park Building, SABC HQ here in Auckland Park in Johannesburg. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief. It is your essential daily briefing for making sense of the forces that are shaping your world here at home, across the African continent, and far beyond our borders. Among some of what we will tell you over the next 3 hours, we'll focus on the quarterly labor force survey figures that have come through from Stats SA. The fourth quarter of 2025 is what was under the spotlight, and that was released by the Statistician General Risenga Maluleke yesterday. It provides a glimmer of hope in the sense that the official unemployment rate, we are told, fell to 31.4%, with 44,000 net jobs created and employment rising to about 17.1 million. But still, the numbers remain concerning. For instance, beneath these modest gains, we're told lies a far more troubling reality. Long-term unemployment affects nearly 80% of unemployed people. So about 80% of people who are unemployed have been unemployed for a prolonged and a longer period of time. So that's one factor. Youth unemployment remains alarmingly high. 43.8% is the figure that is put out by Stats SA. And the number of discouraged work seekers increased by some 233,000, pushing the potential labor force to about 4.6 million. But there are also other issues that come to the fore, issues such as the gendered nature of unemployment, given the country's macroeconomic policy, constrained public expenditure, and the narrowing fiscal space, basically public finances in the state that they are in. There's also these issues of how these figures manifest themselves in terms of the gender dynamics. We are told that employment trends, sectoral shifts, and the erosion of public services disproportionately affect black women in particular. So we'll start with that conversation at 7:10, and we'll speak to Matshidiso Lenkwasa, who is a member of the Budget Justice Coalition. That conversation coming up at 7:10. Then immediately after that, I've been watching the Gabinde Commission of Gabinde inquiry into the fitness of South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Chabuka's fitness to hold office. And my goodness, has that inquiry taken a turn, right? A legal turn, one that I don't know if many people would have anticipated. Basically, what seems to have happened is that, remember those allegations against the Cato Manor SAPS unit all those years ago that seemed to be dead and buried when the NPA decided that there wasn't evidence of the Cato Manor unit being a death squad, a rogue unit. And, it was put behind by such people as General Johan Boysen and others who were associated with that unit. Well, those allegations have rumbled back to life at the Gabinde Commission of Inquiry. Firmly under the spotlight now is whether or not the withdrawal of the charges and the discontinuation of any planned prosecution of the members of that unit was itself founded on evidence and was actually sound in terms of the decision making. And that's because Advocate Andrew Chauke's legal team are now leading their own witnesses, and one of them is in the stand, has been this week, and with details that are coming out there and a revisiting of the various fatal encounters with suspects that involved the Cato Manor squad and Cato Manor unit, and basically revisiting whether or not all of those incidents could be justified killings by members of the police in the course of carrying out their duties. So all of that is back firmly under the spotlight during the Gabinde Commission of Inquiry, and we will be hearing from Thulasizwe Simelane, SABC reporter, at about 20:07, who will report extensively on that story. It has been fascinating to see it, and that's because part of the charge against Andrew Chauke is that he basically was acting in a manner that's untoward in opposing the review that Johan Boysen and others had brought against this whole allegation and the charges that were planned, which then led to the dropping of the charges by the NPA. Well, in his defense and trying to defend himself and his track record, he's now necessarily having to revisit those issues by calling his own witnesses, and that's the result that you are seeing those allegations rumbling back to life. Thulasizwe Simelane, 7:20, is my guest and will give us details on that. And I'm sure you will have seen this story, the passing on of Jesse Jackson, the veteran U.S. civil rights leader, Baptist minister, and also a two-time presidential candidate. And I've seen many people saying, aptly describing him as a friend of South Africa. He has passed on at the age of 84, and this has been announced by his family. In a statement, the family described him as a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless, and the overlooked. And I'm sure many South Africans will have encountered Reverend Jesse Jackson. So if you did encounter him in your life and perhaps have recollections of his role over the many decades, really, during the struggle against apartheid, but also post-apartheid, feel free to share your own recollections and your own reflections on the life and times of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. But what we will do is at 22:08, we'll be speaking to Brooks Spector, international relations expert, who will come through and reflect on the life and legacy of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. The Morning Brief team is at full strength once again. The full bench is ready and on standby for you. And Musa with your half-hourly news updates. Zaikan bringing you all the sporting action that you need to know about. Rob Byrne keeping his eye trained on the country's highways and byways and reporting to you every 20 minutes or so. Melissa Buta completing your picture with the Morning Brief in brief, and that is coming up in the next few minutes. Dauleng Lechela, always watching the economy for you and reporting to you across the 3 hours. And Sipho Mantula will give you a snapshot of news that is moving the needle on the African continent and her diaspora, including his ever-fascinating historical archive. And that is coming up at about 20:07 this morning. Let's complete the conversation and have the conversations that move us. Do call me to make it the conversation that moves all of us. And the number to dial for that is 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes 0614 104 107. Let's get into it. The first hour of the Morning Brief on this Wednesday starts now.
The Blues are going all out for maximum points at Stamford Bridge.
Stevaus flipped it back to him. The Brazilian connection working nicely. João Pedro for two, and he's done it. The Blues Brazilians at the double here.
However, it is a must-win game for the Clarets to try to escape from the danger zone.
Deflected and in! Oh, Burnley lead! Shock lead for the Clarets. Bashir Humphries will claim it. It's got a deflection, and Burnley have got an early lead here.
This is the Premier League. Chelsea FC versus Burnley FC, the Saturday 21 February at 4:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC 3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
At Discovery Health Medical Scheme, we're for health. For family health that shouts.
Push, Mom, harder!
And whispers.
Mummy, I threw up.
With unlimited virtual GP consults on our Smart Saver series, we're for growing health, for rewarding health, and for your family's best health. Like no other. Join Discovery Health Medical Scheme and add your child from 895 Rand per month. Discovery Health Medical Scheme is a registered medical scheme.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
17 minutes after 6. Let's start with the morning brief in brief, as we always do. And for that, we turn to Melissa Puta. Melissa, good morning. This story has been brewing, bubbling under tensions between the KZN Provincial Commissioner of the SAPS, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and one Calvin Matibedi. Tell me what's happening. What's the latest?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. So police in KwaZulu-Natal have dismissed claims by businessman Calvin Matibedi, founder of Calvin and Family Group, who alleged officers planned to assassinate him and intimidate him ahead of his appearance before the Gabinde Commission. Matibedi claims that on the 19th of December of 2025, specialized units, including the PKTT and the K9 unit, raided his offices in Umhlanga in Durban and surrounded his family home. He denied involvement in protection rackets and accused Provincial Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi of targeting him. SAPS called the allegations baseless and malicious and said legal action will be taken against Matibedi for defamatory statements. So this is quite an interesting one, and one would have to watch and see how far it goes.
And of course, Melissa, the SAPS and KZN has egg on their faces in the sense that they have now had to admit that the warrant that was the basis of their raid on Matibedi last year in December was a forged warrant. Basically, someone duped them and presented it, and they acted based on that forgery. That investigation continues. The Social Relief of Distress Grant, it was called the COVID-19 grant, but has been extended over a number of years since it was first introduced, and it has just been extended once again.
Yes, so the Department of Social Development has confirmed that the Social Relief of Distress, also known as the SRD grant, will be extended until the end of March in 2027, following an announcement by President Cyril Ramaphosa during the State of the Nation address. The grant, introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic and previously set to expire next month, will continue at 370 Rand per month with no increase. While the extension ensures payment continuity, it offers no additional financial relief to beneficiaries. Social Development Minister Nokuzola Tholashe has called on the public and stakeholders to submit written comments on the draft regulatory amendments with a 21-day consultation period running from the 11th of February. The SRD grant has been renewed annually through regulatory amendments rather than permanent legislation. Final amendments must be published before the end of March to ensure payments continue seamlessly into the new financial year.
And lastly, Melissa, boots on the ground, we are told the plans have been finalized. SAPS, SANDF will be deployed and an extra province added to those that will have this deployment.
Yes, so Acting Police Minister Feroz Kachalia confirmed that the SAPS National Commissioner Fani Masemula and the SANDF Chief Rudzani Mapwanya have finalized a deployment plan to tackle organized crime, gang violence, and illegal mining, now extending to the Eastern Cape and set to start within 10 days. Announced during a parliamentary session on President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address, the plan includes specialized anti-gang units, intelligence-driven operations, and multidisciplinary task teams involving the National Prosecuting Authority, the SIU, and the South African Revenue Service. An organized crime advisory council will oversee implementation while provinces address socio-economic drivers of crime. Kachalia also emphasized strengthening units addressing gender-based violence, improving victim support, revitalizing community policing, and enhancing police accountability through vetting, lifestyle audits, and a potential national police board to implement reforms recommended by the Gabinde Commission. Further measures will be announced to ensure professional and constitutional policing. So it will be interesting to see in 10 days how everything takes shape.
Yeah.
So we will watch that closely.
All right, Melissa, thank you for that. That's Melissa Puta with the Morning Brief in Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
On the weather front, just one warning that the Weather Service wants you to be aware of. It is a yellow level 1 warning, and it is in place over the Ubuntu, Mtonjeni, Umsobomvu, Renosterberg, Tembelihle and Siyathemba in the Northern Cape, as well as Dr. Beyers Nodier, Blue Crane Route, and Ingxubayethemba local municipalities in the Eastern Cape. That yellow level 1 warning is for severe thunderstorms associated with large amounts of small hail, excessive lightning, heavy downpours leading to localized flooding of susceptible roads, settlements, as well as low-lying bridges and areas. Then the rest of your weather will be like this. Pretoria will be partly cloudy with a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 28. Same conditions in Johannesburg, partly cloudy, 14 to 27. Vereeniging, partly cloudy, 15 to 26. Mbombela, partly cloudy, 14 to 30. Polokwane, partly cloudy, 14 to 30. Mahikeng will be fine, becoming partly cloudy, 14 to 28. Bloemfontein will be fine, becoming partly cloudy, with isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers, 15 to 29. Kimberley will be fine, becoming partly cloudy, with isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers, 15 to 30. Uppington will be fine, becoming partly cloudy, with isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers, 20 to 34. Cape Town will be cloudy, becoming partly cloudy to fine by the afternoon, with a minimum of 19 and a maximum of 26. George, partly cloudy, 19 to 27. Gqeberha will be cloudy at first, otherwise partly cloudy, 19 to 29. Gumpo City, formerly East London, will be fine, becoming partly cloudy with isolated thunder showers in the afternoon, 19 to 29. Durban, partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 19 to 28. Richards Bay will be partly cloudy to cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, with a minimum of 17 and a maximum of 32.
Wherever you are in the world, SAFM 104 to 107 is accessible. We're also streaming live on Facebook, X, and YouTube at SAFM Radio. We acknowledge and appreciate everyone tuning in and watching our streams. Stay with SAFM 104 to 107 as we bring you Commission Live, breaking stories, and thought-provoking lectures. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
24 minutes after 6. I've got to say that the weather that we just brought you had cut off one of the cities that you know we always bring. That is Pietermaritzburg. Hence, we didn't give you that update. A bit of a difficulty this morning, but nevertheless, we soldier on. Tensions between the United States and Iran have escalated sharply as Tehran announced temporary closures in parts of the Strait of Hormuz during military drills just hours after indirect nuclear talks began in Geneva. The negotiations mediated by Oman come amid a significant U.S. military buildup in the Middle East and renewed warnings from Iran's leadership that attempts at regime change would fail. The developments underscore in many ways the fragile state of diplomacy over Iran's nuclear program and the high geopolitical stakes for global energy markets and regional stability. Let's speak to Roland Henwood, political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. It seemed in the last few weeks as if there was a stepping back and a de-escalation and prioritizing the dialogue and negotiations. Iran also indicating its willingness to negotiate as we see the processes in Geneva. What has now happened to see this escalation that we are seeing coming at the same time as the negotiations?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Thank you. I think there are two interpretations. The first one is that both sides are buying time. In other words, preparing for whichever outcome or whichever development is going to be the best to take. Buying time in terms of deploying more military forces by the US, because what they had deployed was indicated as not sufficient to ensure they achieve objectives should they decide to attack Iran. On the Iranian side, also buying time, trying to get negotiations to start, but not going to happen quickly, to prevent US action and hopefully getting some kind of a diplomatic process going. At the same time, the Iranians are also using their military to ramp up the pressure. And if one looks at this, what's been said by the top leadership, indications are that Iran is not going to just back down. So they are creating a sense of, we are strong, we have a big army, we can fight you, and we will not be pushed around. To what extent that is going to it will shape the process, but to what extent it's going to be successful, one would have to see. Because the pressure coming from the US is significant at this stage.
It seems both sides, though, do know their pressure points away from the negotiating table. The Strait of Hormuz and its importance to global trade, it's a choke point, isn't it? But at the same time, the US and that military movement, moving of military equipment and personnel, also is a pressure point.
Yes, the Strait of Hormuz is a pressure point, but you can only use it once. And I think that's the limitation that the Iranians face. Once you close it, you shock the energy markets, and that becomes a reality. So it's not a card that you're going to play early on just to make a point. I don't think that's going to work. Iran is not at this stage the biggest player in the global energy and oil market. Most of its oil trade is going east to China. And that is something else that the US will keep in mind, but it's not going to be the ultimate deterrent, I think. A willingness to negotiate, and that is the key. What is negotiated can change. What Mr. Trump said they want to achieve, what the Iranians said they're willing to go is far removed from each other. But that seems to be where the options and the leeway is. If the two sides can find each other, then the military option, of course, need not be used. But if there's no willingness to engage and no progress in the negotiations, it's definitely on the table. And it seems that Washington is believing that it can pull this off. So the Iranians must face the pressure. How much leeway the Iranians have at this stage is difficult. We must remember that the regime is under huge pressure domestically. And the international environment is also not favorable to them. The two most important allies, Russia and China, are facing different realities. China won't get involved in a military conflict. Russia cannot at this stage really provide any assistance to Iran. So they find themselves in a very difficult position.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. As always, that's Roland Hanwood, political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria, just focusing on the tensions between the United States and Iran amid those negotiations in Geneva. Brings us to 6:30. On standby is N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shedrick Sibiya is set to appear before the Matlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. He's accused of ties to Katiso Katie Mulife and Vuzimuzi Kat Matlala, alleged key players in organized crime. Ekurhuleni Mayor Nkosindipile Xhakaza has reshuffled the city's mayoral committee. The reason for the reshuffle is not immediately clear, although it comes amid tension between coalition partners, the ANC and EFF. Former US President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle have described the late Reverend Jesse Jackson as a true giant. They say for more than 60 years, he helped lead some of the most significant movements for change in human history. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A couple of major protests this morning blocking routes, very key and busy routes as well. The N2 at Harding is currently blocked by protesters. So between Port Shepstone and Harding, the advice is to travel later rather than set out now into that blockage. Also just north of Lusikisiki, down in the Eastern Cape, the R61 currently blocked just north of Lusikisiki on the way to and from Flagstaff. So that blockage there, also burning tyres and stones across the road. If you need to go that way, might be an idea to travel a little bit later. Joburg side, pretty pretty heavy this morning on the Mike 1 from Gold Reef City or Xavier Street, really, or Monday right through to around about Smith Street in Braamfontein. There's a big backlog on the Mike 1 North up to Greyston Drive as well. That's an early queue. And a breakdown at Galulis on the N12 East means delays coming out of Alberton and Germiston on that N3 North into Galulis, already quite badly backed up. And a breakdown on the M1 North at Winnie Mandela, causing delays arriving into four ways from the Randburg area. The mighty Mopbody Highway looks like an issue at the bend this morning. That's all heavy coming down through Theo Martin's territory. Heading out of Durban, a little bit of overnight roadworks hangover around Key Ridge. So expect a slowdown there on your way to Pietermaritzburg. And Cape Town just generally really busy this morning. N2 inbound from Khayelitsha to Mowbray Main. The N1 Brackenfell through to Sable Road just gives you an idea of the volume of traffic that's already around. Also heavy out of Mitchell's Plain this morning. M7 North to Highlands Drive backed up. With your traffic update for SABC News, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning to you. Let's talk the T20 World Cup, and it's the UAE up next for the Proteas, and that's starting, within an hour or so?
That's right, Thulas. We have got the action, and the Proteas must handle the UAE properly this morning because in this kind of tournament, there's no soft landings. But as you know, we've made it through to the Super 8s, and this is the final T20 World Cup group match in Delhi. We've got the Super 8 spot, but the assistant coach, Albie Morkel, says the real World Cup begins now with India waiting on Sunday. Expect a possible squad rotation today as the Proteas fine-tune combinations ahead of the high-pressure knockout phase. More cricket. Ireland and Australia have both been eliminated from the T20 World Cup after rain washed out Ireland's Group B clash with Zimbabwe in Kandy. Zimbabwe's shock win over Australia earlier in the tournament meant they needed just a point to advance, while Ireland had to win to stay alive. Now, with the match abandoned, with both sides taking a point, leaving Zimbabwe on 5 points and safely through to the Super 8s, Ireland finished on 3 points, while Australia, beaten by Sri Lanka on Monday, sit on 2 with only a dead rubber against Oman remaining. On to soccer news. Stellenbosch FC coach Gavin Hunt has welcomed the busy schedule his team faced with and says it's important for them to play as often as possible. Now, they do have a clash against Magesi FC this evening at 7:30, which also marks their return to their Darnie Craven Stadium for the first time since December. Elsewhere, the new Tottenham interim manager Igor Tudor says there's no time for excuses as he looks to lift the club from its unacceptable Premier League position. The former Juventus coach replaced Thomas Frank last week after Spurs' winless run stretched to 8 matches, sitting just 5 points above the relegation zone with 12 games left. And in the UEFA Champions League knockout playoffs, there was drama across Europe overnight. Galatasaray stunning Juventus 5-2 in a goal fest at Istanbul. Real Madrid edged Benfica 1-0 away from home, while Paris Saint-Germain claimed a 3-2 victory over Monaco in a thrilling French showdown. Borussia Dortmund kept things solid, beating Atalanta 2-0 to take control of their tie. And finally, golf. Tiger Woods saying his recovery from disc replacement surgery is progressing well. He's back hitting full shots. His Achilles is no longer an issue, though consistency is still a work in progress. He was speaking ahead of the 100th Genesis Invitational at Riviera. He called the milestone event pretty special, while also backing plans to reshape the PGA Tour schedule. That's your sport here on The Morning Brief. I'm Zai Khan. More at the top of the hour.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling for the first update of the morning. Ndauling, let's start with this bidding war that we've been watching.
Yeah.
Warner Bros. Discovery. Tell me about Netflix granting Warner Bros. Discovery waiver to engage with Paramount. So basically saying that you can engage both sides, yeah?
That's right, Thulas, and morning. Now, just when you think the bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery has played its final scene, another act is about to unfold. In the latest episode, Netflix has granted Warner Brothers a limited 7-day waiver under its merger agreement. Now, this allows Warner Bros. To discuss a competing proposal from rival bidder Paramount Discovery. Now, Paramount Skydance, that is. Now, Netflix acknowledged the ongoing distractions for shareholders and broader entertainment industry. The waiver is intended to allow Warner to fully and finally resolve the competing proposal. And this comes as hedge fund Pentwater Capital Management, which owns roughly 50 million Warner Brothers shares, is now backing the Paramount bid. Paramount has sweetened its $30 a share proposal by offering additional cash if the deal is delayed and agreeing to cover a $2.8 billion break fee owed to Netflix. However, Warner Bros. Board maintains the revised offer still falls short, citing unresolved financing risks, including questions around debt commitments and equity backing linked to Larry Ellison. So it's a wait and see game as shareholders are set to vote on this bid next month.
To think that at one point it seemed as if it was done and dusted. It was Netflix and Warner Bros. There was no third party involved, and boom, Paramount Skydance.
And I think we forget that there's still regulatory approvals that still need to be made. So it's going to be quite a long a ride for that deal.
Well, we are here, popcorn in hand. Let's talk BHP striking silver. And I see that you added the word streaming. I suppose you are still thinking about the streaming wars, were you?
Not necessarily. So BHP already owns silver assets, and so it will be streaming through those silver assets to another company, right? It's taking a bit of a turn when it comes to its silver strategy. The mining giant has signed a $4.3 billion deal, selling a portion of its future silver production from the Antamina mine in Peru. Under the deal, Wheaton Precious Metals Corp will pay BHP upfront cash for a share of silver output in the coming years, giving the miner immediate liquidity without adding debt. Now, BHP says the move frees up capital to reinvest in its core metals and drive more value for shareholders. BHP CEO Mike Henry had added that the agreement reflects a strategic approach as silver isn't central to BHP's long-term plans, but copper and zinc remain key. And by monetizing part of its silver now, BHP can double down on those other metals. This deal comes alongside its half-year earnings. Profit jumped 22%, with copper still the engine of growth, accounting for more than half of earnings, and production on that front was up 30% over the period.
How did we close yesterday, and how have we started the day in those markets that have started trading?
The U.S. stocks back online, and those counters staging a rebound overnight, with stocks back in positive territory. This as the pullback in tech shares eased. Back home, a precious metals sell-off really weighing on trade, with the Resi 10 down 4% and the all share closing 1.3% lower. That also knocking the rand this morning as the dollar continued to strengthen. The local unit is sitting at 16.01 to the greenback, 21.70 to the pound, and 18.96 to the euro. In commodity markets, oil is range bound, trading just above $66 a barrel as traders assess developments between the US and Iran following talks between the nations. And then lastly, in Asia, trade still limited and will be for the rest of the week, due to, of course, the Chinese New Year and holidays around that. Japanese stocks, however, firing through, managing to start the day in positive territory.
All right, Ndauling, thank you for that. We'll talk to you in the second hour of the show, just after 7:30.
Africa Update on SAFM.
And as always, we turn to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. Let's start with these tributes that are being paid to the late iconic Reverend Jesse Jackson. We've been hearing from the AU Commissioner.
Refreshing morning, Thulas and Jumbo Africa. Indeed, Thulas, I thought let me just take one message, Thulas, for all 54 member states as they were paying tribute and paying condolences to the family of Jackson and to the American civil rights movement. The chairperson of the AU, Yusuf, yesterday said to us that the contribution and the role that Reverend Jesse Jackson has played, it has a profound link with Africa's struggles for justice, dignity, equality, and liberation. The issue of the sixth region, to us, of the diaspora being recognized by the AU was one of the key elements that Reverend Jesse Jackson stood for. Also, when I look to us on that speech, it also acknowledged that contribution of this concept of African American in the 80s, that Reverend Jackson had to affirm the identity, the heritage, and the historical consciousness among the people of African descent. So from Addis Ababa and the whole continent to us, there have been messages of support to the family of Jackson as well as to the civil rights movement in the U.S.
Now, here's a sentence I never thought I'd ever say in my understanding of the situation in Zimbabwe. Love Mo Maduku representing the war veterans. That's something I never thought would ever happen.
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
Even if he is a political leader and is an opposition, Lavo Moduka, but when it comes to representing the war veterans, and this is an agent application. They filed an agent application yesterday seeking one thing to nullify the proposed constitutional amendment. Remember, we call it constitutional amendment number 3. That is trying to approve Emerson Mnangagwa until 2030. They are saying it's a violation of Section 90, subsection 1, Section 90, subsection 2, paragraph B, Section 196, subsection 2 of the Constitution. So they are seeking declaratory order from the Concord in Zimbabwe. For them, they are seeking also what we call, as you know in law, a just and equitable order, which is guaranteed by Section 175 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. And they are also raising a key section in their Constitution, Section 328, subsection 7. I've mentioned more than 5 constitutional clauses to that, and that's how when you approach Constitutional Court, it has to be on the constitutionality of this bill number 3 that has been proposed by Ziyambi since last week.
Let's talk about this ongoing concern around the recruitment of nationals from various parts of the world, especially on the African continent. Nigeria is concerned about the recruitment of its own citizens to fight on Russia's side in Ukraine.
Even if that note verbal did not name Moscow, they are raising concerns about what is happening in terms of their nationals, more than 36 that they say they have been recruited, but also the dossier coming from Ukraine claiming that 1,436 citizens from 36 African countries are fighting on the side for Russia, but they don't mention on their side to us. The funny thing about this enlisting to us recruitment is that it has happened many years ago, months ago to us, from the 1800s to 1900s. People have been moving from one country to the other. Hence, we still have a problem even today, how to handle this issue of youth unemployment in the African continent, how to look at the issues of exchange, what we call the mutual cooperation amongst member states when it comes to military exchange. Because this has been happening, like I said, to us. We have seen in the conflict of Middle East, we have seen in the conflict that even UK, US, France, they've been recruiting African nationals. But it seems when it comes to Global South, there is this global North media narrative that is always painting Moscow at a bad way. As also Ukraine, like I said, to us, is doing the same recruitment. But like I said, Uganda, Kenya, Nigeria are not pointing Moscow directly, but they are aware of the challenges that are happening in this conflict.
And in your historical archives, 2 chapters that you want to open, both of them from the exact same date, 18 February 1965.
Absolutely, Thulas. One is that the Gambia, the land of Adam Barrow, where Yahya Jammeh was a longest-serving president, it's a holiday today. They are celebrating their independence. They were liberated from the colonizer British on this day 61 years ago. You'll recall that the name the Gambia, Thulas, come from the river Gambia that divides that country into 2 almost equal halves. They got their republic in 1970, but this day represent when they were liberated from the British during that time of colonization. Also, I look back at the African diaspora, Malcolm X, Thulas, making his last public speech on this day 61 years ago at Barnard College. And one of the issues that he said is that others were saying he was articulating, dynamic, reverting. And what was strange is that Malcolm X, it seems he saw his death coming to us, because 3 days later, on the 21st of February, he was assassinated. But in that speech, the last speech of Malcolm, he says that no one can get out without trouble. And this thing with me, that was Malcolm, will be resolved by either death or violence. So one can say Malcolm foresaw that there was a plot to assassinate him. Hence, his last speeches that he made in the universities, in the media, it was all about the threat that was waged against his life. Asante sana Thulas, leading the conversation, SAFM observing the state of the nation.
Sipho, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mandula with the Africa update for this morning.
What's with the camouflage, Dorf? I'm going hunting. Just me, nature, and my most underrated off-roader, a rental car. Hunting? You could fit that little car in your backpack, Dorf. I sit in the driver's seat. Baggage at the back, chairs on the roof. The kudu is going to get in and strap its own seatbelt, Savvy. Could do with more legroom, Dorf. Go hunt for a new 4x4 at Weebuck Cars. They got great deals. Oh, shot, Savvy.
Don't be doof, be savvy. We buy cars geared for that big trip, geared for you.
The Gauteng Provincial Legislature is your provincial parliament, working daily to strengthen democracy and ensure that the voices of Gauteng's people are heard. As the lawmaking and oversight body of the province, the legislature holds government departments accountable, monitors service delivery, and promotes ethical, transparent governance that puts communities first. Through public participation programs, oversight visits and platforms that bring citizens closer to decision-making, the legislature empowers residents to influence policies that affect their lives. By driving accountability, responsiveness and openness, the GPL remains committed to building a government that delivers for all. The Gauteng Provincial Legislature. Your view, our vision.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A reminder of the protesting down around Harding area this morning. It is west of Harding, so Harding Stafford's Post on the N2. That section of roadway currently blocked off. So if you need to go from Coxstad through to Harding, Coxstad through Harding or Coxstad through Port Shepstone, maybe just hold back and do it a little bit later once that situation has been resolved. Also protesting Fort Beaufort to Alice in the Eastern Cape on the R63. And there's some protesting just north of Lusikisiki on the R61, just north of the town that's on the Flagstaff Road. So all of those will hold you up over the next few hours. Joburg this morning, roadworks popped up on the Mike 1 going north between Corlett and Greyston. That's why it's so heavily backed up heading through from Parktown towards Sandton this morning. Before you get there, Gold Reef City to sort of Oxford Road, Parktown, that's pretty heavy. That's normal. You'll get past Oxford Road, just get a little tiny gap then from sort of Houghton Drive territory, 11th Avenue, it's all the way through to Corlett Drive. Absolutely jam-packed into those works. Broken down truck stuck on the N3 North, rammed to the N12 at Galulis. That's a disaster. Traffic all the way back to Germiston and Alberton side. So very heavy coming up that N3 through Bedfordview as you hunt for that ramp onto the N12. If you've got to get from the south to the airport, might want to think about some serious alternative route actions today. Durban through Pietermaritzburg. Let's get you an update there. There was some delays around Key Ridge this morning. Some overnight roadworks overran a little bit early, but that's all been sort of normalised now. It's okay. There is some heavy pressure on the N2 between the cement factory and Spaghetti Junction. It's just a slightly different traffic pattern than normal, so would point to something broken down, perhaps just north of Spaghetti Junction, I would think today. And Cape Town, fairly heavy on the highways. Give you an idea of it. The N2 coming inbound at Khayelitsha is quite slow, and then from the airport, it's all the way through to Main Road. The N1's got traffic from the R300 right through to sort of Woodstock. The M3 backlogging from beyond Constantia all the way through to about Paradise Road. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Catch the season premiere of Colour Your Plate this Sunday evening at 7 as 4 hungry home cooks step into the kitchen to reimagine beloved family favourites in bold and unexpected ways. With the return of a Sterling from a previous season judging their every move, only one will earn the chance to progress and cook alongside them in the next round. Who will impress and take the first step forward? Find out on Colour Your Plate, Sundays at 7 p.m, repeat Saturdays at 4:30, only on SABC2.
This February, love staying informed. As your day winds down and the evening begins, Primetime News moves to a new home. Weekdays at 6 p.m. The stories that matter, the context you trust, the news that connects you to South Africa and the world. Because loving what you watch also means trusting what you hear. Primetime News is weeknights at 8 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3. This February, fall in love with food that tells a story. From bold new culinary stars to untamed destinations and unforgettable flavors. Gordon Ramsay brings passion, pressure, and purpose to your screen. Gordon Ramsay's Future Food Stars, Wednesdays 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
All right, there's a concerning situation that is developing out in the Northern Cape. A search and rescue operation underway at Ekapa Mine in Kimberley after 5 mine workers got trapped underground following a mudslide in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Management has confirmed that communication with the miners has been cut off as emergency teams race against time to locate and reach them. Let's speak to the president of the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, AMCU, and that is Joseph Matunjwa, who joins me now. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. It is really distressing, isn't it? The incident having happened in the early hours of Tuesday, and today you and I are talking on a Wednesday morning. What do we know about the welfare and plight of these workers, and where exactly they are trapped, and the situation that they find themselves in?
Good morning to you, and thank you for the opportunity, and good morning to your listeners. Yes, based on a limited information as AMCO, since we do not have members, but because of mine health and safety interests and as a class issue, yes, we are commenting on this matter. And this accident reminded us the Jagersfontein, if you remember, in 2022, where the dam burst. The tailing dams are very dangerous. It is a dangerous working environment that needs 24 hours monitoring. So you need to have a dedicated personnel that will monitor those dams. And then if you don't have such, these things are likely to happen, because there is no supervision on this one. And two, with these people who are missing, a few years ago, we've been calling for a new technology which is called a person locator, of which I think the government did pass that, I think is Mine Health and Safety Section 16.7, if I'm not mistaken, that every worker should have that technology. Where it's missing, they can locate through technology, which I doubt whether this company did implement such. So based on the mud rush, it could happen that maybe it was underground. If it's not underground, it is a surface tailing dam, of which this rain that has been raining, it also exacerbated or did influence this kind of accident.
So indications are that it is underground, but you're saying that this is an incident that talks to the issue of mining in tailing dams and the management of those processes.
Yes. Remember, these guys, they were just working on tailings, of which they are refining what was already mined, of which most they use water, pumping water, and so forth. So this mud rush could have been a burst of a tailing dam, of which it would have went down to underground or even in the surface, as it happened at Jagersfontein in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, around about September. So here we are talking about the issue of mine health and safety, whether there were people who were located, dedicated for this kind of job, to look after these dams for 24/7. You can't make a mistake. I still remember we had a big case with Fraser Alexander as AMCO, where they were retrenching the tail dam monitors, of which that matter, I think it went to Labour Court to say it is danger for the workers at work, at the workplace. It is danger for the community. If these dams are not monitored, they flood and happen to burst. So this is the kind of the situation that could have happened in that mine. Then the question will ask whether there was a mine health and safety committee at workplace, there were dedicated full-time health and safety shaft steward at the workplace. These are the kind of thing. And also, mine Department of Mineral and Energy, when did they last visited this dam and monitor to check whether the compliance is been ahead to, is been followed, so to say.
So when an incident like this happens, and I imagine that in your line of work you've dealt with quite a number, how important is it for several stakeholders, including labor, to be involved? I see that NUMSA, for example, is calling for access as close as possible to the site. How important is that, as well as the transparency of how the search and rescue operation is being conducted?
I think if NUMSA is a representative trade union, they don't even need a permission, because if they are the recognized trade union, surely those formation in terms of mine health and safety committees, they are there in place. You remember when the Lily mine collapsed, we rushed there in the very same morning after the collapse. I went underground myself to survey where then we picked up that there was a shortcoming where they were mining the crown pillar itself that sustained the mine. So NUMSA shouldn't be asking permission. If they are recognized as a trade union representing workers, they've got health and safety structures, of which it's a mix of management and the trade union. They should just go there. It's very important. Yes, there will be some areas where they cannot enter because they don't maybe have those expertise. But to be around the area, to be regularly informed of what is happening is very crucial. Because these mines, we know how they do it. They do these things like couples because they are low unto themselves. It's about money, it's about profit, not about the really mine health and safety, of the workers. That is what we are experiencing. Hence, we've been calling the amendment of Mine Health and Safety Act to say this such incident that can be preventable. This CEO must face the law. They must be charged with culpable homicide because there is a technology that is available. They don't want to spend money in saving lives, but they can spend money to buy material equipment that can extract minerals, but they cannot buy equipment that can save lives of those that are extracting the very same minerals.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. Joseph Matunjwa, President of the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, AMCU.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Good morning, Bratulas Mbongo, Sondisa here. Bratulas, you see these counterfeit goods like turkeys, jeans that are being confiscated by JMPD. Why can't they take those things and give them to the street kids or poorer people like maybe struggling, like living in shacks, instead of destroying them? And secondly, as for unemployment rate, it is not true. The unemployment rate current, I think it's sitting at 55% or 50%, but it's above 50%. They are lying, man. I wonder how do they conduct this research?
Yeah. Mbongo, thank you for that. And I think there's an idea there that perhaps we could speak to Stats SA for a refresher of how the quarterly labor force survey actually works. 7 a.m. Let's go straight to N. Musa.
Outsurance is in the business of saving you money on your car insurance premium. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
In our top stories, Sibiya to appear before the Matlanga Commission and Ekurhuleni's mayoral committee reshuffled. Good morning. Suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya is set to appear before the Matlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. He's accused of ties to Katiso Katie Mulife and Vuzimuzi Kat Matlala, alleged key players in organised crime. Witnesses who have testified have suggested the ties involved an alleged flow of money and protection. Sibiya has denied any wrongdoing. Sibahle Mota reports.
At the center of corruption allegations made against General Sibiya are the 121 dockets taken from the political killings task team. General Sibiya has been accused of moving the dockets from KwaZulu-Natal to the national office in Pretoria, resulting in investigations being halted. Various witnesses who have testified before the Matlanga Commission have stated that Sibiya had no authority to effect this move. The Matlanga Commission is investigating allegations of corruption in law enforcement agencies and the infiltration of alleged criminal cartels in these institutions. I am Sibahle Mota in Pretoria.
Ekurhuleni Mayor Nkosindiphi Xhakaza has reshuffled the city's mayoral committee. The reason for the reshuffle is not immediately clear, although it comes amid tension between coalition partners, the ANC and EFF. Xhakaza says there were extensive consultations with the multi-party organizations represented in council. Natasha Piri reports.
The ANC has now 5 MMC positions, the EFF 2, whilst the Patriotic Alliance, Action SA and National Freedom Party all have 1. Some changes include Action SA's mayoral candidates in the Metro, Xolani Khumalo, being appointed as the MMC of Community Services and Bylaw Enforcement. The NFP's councillor Siphumu Lentombela comes in as the MMC of Corporate Shared Services, whilst the EFF councillor Thembi Msane has now been moved to the Infrastructure and Economic Development Agency. The changes come after EFF leader Julius Malema said his party would end cooperation agreements with the ANC in Gauteng.
Trade union NUMSA has requested that management of the Ikapa mine in Kimberley in the Northern Cape provide details of efforts to rescue 5 workers. The workers were trapped after a mud rush incident in the early hours of yesterday. The mine released a statement following the incident confirming 5 workers were unaccounted for. The union wants information on whether management has managed to establish contact with the missing workers. Gauteng Education MEC Matome Chilwane will today visit the family of a grade 5 learner from Rigile Primary School in Tembisa, east of Johannesburg. The learner died after a goalpost fell on him while he was playing on the school soccer field. Police have launched an investigation. Provincial Education spokesperson Steve Mabona.
MEC Chilwane will be conveying his condolences to the family and also providing an update on how the department will be managing the investigation or the probe on the circumstances surrounding this said incident.
Former U.S. President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle have described the late Reverend Jesse Jackson as a true giant. They say for more than 60 years he helped lead some of the most significant movements for change in human history. Jackson died in Chicago yesterday at the age of 84. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
The Obamas wrote in their statement that from organizing boycotts and sit-ins to registering millions of voters to advocating for freedom and democracy around the world, Reverend Jackson was relentless in his belief that we are all children of God, deserving of dignity and respect. They pointed to Jackson's 2 runs for president in the 1980s as laying the foundation for Obama's own campaign to the highest office in the land, making history in 2008, a moment that brought Jackson to tears. The Obamas expressed their gratitude for a lifetime of service and sent their deepest condolences to the Jackson family and everyone who knew and loved him. Sherwin Brycepees, SABC News, New York.
Recapping the top stories, suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya is set to appear before the Matlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. He's accused of ties to Katiso Katie Mulife and Vuzimuzi Kat Matlala, alleged key players in organized crime. For SAFM News, I'm Anne Musa.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
leap into February with some great car insurance savings from Outsurance, like 45-year-old Jason, who saves an unbelievable 520 Rand on his 2025 Hyundai i10. Get a quote now, and if Outsurance can't save you money, ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Why pay more when you could be saving? SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. Cricket, Kagiso Rabada, Lungi Ngidi and Deval Brevis ready for early fireworks as the Proteas meet the United Arab Emirates at 7:30 a.m. this morning. And in soccer news, the Premier Soccer League has ordered urgent improvements to the Dr. Petrus Molimela Stadium in Bloemfontein after its pitch conditions were deemed below standard. We'll have the details around 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Two really big highway delays around Joburg, both worth avoiding. One is the Mike 1 going north roadworks overrunning this morning around Caller Drive in Melrose. Big backlogs coming into that from Braamfontein Parktown. And the other one is a breakdown, a stationary truck inside Galulis off the N3 north onto the N12 and R24 route. So big delays coming off the N12 right back at Alberton this morning. Also a breakdown on the M1 north at William Mandela. That's pushing a queue back as far as Bayers Nordia. And a crash coming out of Benoni on the N12 near the R21 off-ramp there at Ritfontein. That's a queue deep back into Benoni, back to Snake Road territory. Durban's N2 north is extreme this morning. There's big backlogs from Cement Factory up to Spaghetti Junction. You've got a breakdown before the interchange, and then you've got the roadworks just after Westwood Mall. The M13 Hillcrest through to Kloof is being held up. Looks slow going into the Maytime Stores area. And Cape Town heavy on the N1 this morning, an issue around Woodstock by Lower Church. They're coming through from Belleville. That's all heavily backed up. Marine Drive, Tableview to Sunset Beach. In fact, to Milnerton's heavy. And then you've got a secondary queue on that Marine Drive trying to join the N1 at Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 7. Welcome to the second hour of the Morning Brief on SAFM 104 to 107. It is a big day at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. General Shadrack Sibiya will be appearing before that commission, and you can catch it live here on SAFM and also across the SABC platforms throughout the day. I mean, a man against whom so many allegations have been made, so many witnesses alluding to him, he will be appearing before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. And I do expect that it will be a slightly different appearance compared to what you saw when he appeared before the ad hoc committee in Parliament. So it is going to be a big day. Speaking of that, then, the inquiries, the public inquisitorial processes that are playing themselves out in the country. In this hour, at about 7:20, we'll be talking about a different kind of inquiry, the inquiry into the fitness to hold office of the South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Andrew Chauke. That has taken a turn of its own, with allegations against the former Cato Manor SAPS unit, allegations that seemed to be dead and buried. And, you know, many of those people who were part of that unit of the SAPS were beginning to put them behind, in their history. Now those allegations appear to be rumbling back to life as Advocate Chauke's legal team are leading their own witnesses at the Gabinde inquiry into his fitness to hold office. Ufenza Stimo will report at length about that. It's been fascinating just watching it all unfold. It's raised a lot of questions about whether or not that chapter was closed properly. But before we get there, we'll be speaking to Matsiriso Lingwasa, member of the Budget Justice Coalition, and we'll be reflecting on the quarterly labor force survey for the last quarter of 2025, The numbers are out. They show a slight improvement as far as the unemployment situation is concerned. But, there are many, many dynamics at play there. And Matshidiso Lengwasa will help us unpack all of that. The numbers to dial 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Let's get into it then. The second hour of the morning brief on this Wednesday.
The Proteas women are pumped up to display top-class cricket and emphasize that they are unbreakable. However, the women in green are confident their presence will be felt. This is the one-day international encounter. Witness the first ODI between South Africa and Pakistan on Sunday, 22 February at 9:30 a.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC 3 with reports on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. This February, fall in love with the journey. No phones, no flights. Just determination, connection, and the open road. From breathtaking landscapes to unexpected challenges. Race Across the World is back. Bigger, bolder, and more emotional than ever. Because sometimes the best way to find yourself is to travel together. Race Across the World Season 4, Thursdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
13 minutes after 7. The country's unemployment rate has edged down again on paper, a second consecutive quarter of relief. Statistics South Africa says the official rate fell to 31.4% in the fourth quarter of 2025, with 44,000 net jobs added and total employment climbing to 17.1 million. But the story those numbers tell is far more complicated. Nearly 80% of the unemployed have been without work for the long term. Youth unemployment remains entrenched at 43.8%, and 233,000 more discouraged work seekers have swelled the potential labor force to about 4.6 million. There are also layered issues around the gendered nature of this impact of unemployment. Tight fiscal policy and shrinking public expenditure come into that picture, and the data reveals a labor market whose fragility is falling most heavily on black women as workers and as unpaid caregivers holding households together. It's a mouthful. Let's speak to Matshidiso Lengwasa, member of the Budget Justice Coalition. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. Before we get to the gendered nature of these dynamics around unemployment, just your overall impressions of the heading and trajectory of the unemployment situation in the country.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and good morning to all the listeners. So on the surface, the headline paints somewhat of a more optimistic picture, as if you look at the context, if you've been following the Quota Labor Survey for the past few years, it has been, the unemployment rates have actually been persistently high, and in many quarters over the past few years have been increasing. And so that's been something that has been concerning for people across the country, including us in civil society, because, we are in agreement with how government diagnoses the problem that we do have a triple challenge in South Africa of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. But this unemployment that we have is so persistent in our country, and it is structural in nature. And I think that you can see that when you delve into the numbers and see the increasing number of discouraged job seekers, but also the persistently high number of people who are in long-term unemployment. And so it is, on the one hand, welcoming the 44,000 net jobs that have been created, because those are livelihoods and opportunities for people to lift themselves and lift their families out of poverty and be able to really contribute to the fiscus as well, and to build a country that really works and an economy that works. But if we're really going to address this unemployment crisis that is plaguing the country, especially borne by young people, and as we'll talk in this conversation, particularly young Black women, I think that we're going to have to do so much as a country, as an economy, to improve, to really do more than just 44,000. Like, there's many, many more jobs that need to be created.
So let's get into the nuances then that you want to foreground. And it all has to do with the modest growth and the promising picture that we are painting could have been even better if we had, if I understand your point correctly, if we had the public finances and the fiscus and public expenditure, the picture there being different from what it is. Do you believe that things could have been better, particularly in those sectors that are women dominated?
Absolutely. And I think there's still an opportunity for things to be better with the upcoming budget speech, and just in general, as we charter a way forward in this country of building an economy that works for all. And so what we're seeing is that, yes, unemployment affects all of us in this country, whether you are employed or not, as we see with the figures of long-term unemployment particularly. But then we've also seen, I think, a report by the HSRC that labeled young Black women particularly as the face of unemployment. And so we have this crisis, but it's not borne by everyone equally. And the reason for that, I mean, if you look at what kind of sectors grow or contributes to economic growth in our country, it appears that sectors, for example, like even in the private sector, like textiles industry and the care industry, which is an area that we focus more on in the Budget Justice Coalition, that those sectors have not been growing, and they haven't been, they used to be places or sites of employment for young Black women, and are no longer in that way. So nowadays what we have is that we have industries or economies, for instance, like the financial sectors, which are perhaps more skills-based rather than labor-intensive. And so when they grow, the economy grows, but the number of jobs and livelihoods that are secured do not grow at the same rate. And where government comes into this is that over the past decade, our government has been has committed to a fiscal policy which is to reduce the public sector wage bill, right? There's been talk about a balloon public sector wage bill. We pay too much to public sector employees. But the impact of that is that, or how it has been done, or the approach that government has taken, is that the frontline services, so nurses, doctors, teachers, we haven't been hiring enough, which is a real contradiction, because if you walk into public clinic or you go into schools in the communities that we are serving, you will see that nobody is saying that we have too many nurses, we have too many teachers. In fact, we're saying the opposite. And so we have a fiscal policy that has committed to reducing investments in our public sector. And those are sites where women, especially young Black women, used to find employment. And being a teacher, it used to be a site of employment, and now is no longer in that way.
I take it then that as we build up to Budget 2026, you are seeking to elevate that conversation and basically drive a message that says the age of austerity must come to an end, particularly its manifestation in terms of the public service sector.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. And South Africa does find itself economically and fiscally in a better position than it did in previous budgets. So we are, our revenue set to increase. We have higher than expected revenues that are coming in, and we have windfalls. This is really an opportunity to scale, to do more than 44,000 net jobs created, but to really rebuild our public services, and in turn also create opportunities for work for young Black women as community healthcare workers, in public employment programs, in teaching, and in doctors. And we can really move away from this age of austerity back into tabling a nation-building budget. But it really requires government to commit to doing that, and seeing the role that it can play in advancing fiscal policy that can improve the lives of people, including addressing the unemployment crisis that we find ourselves in.
Lastly, the other element I wanted to tease out with you, is the issue around the care economy, and you're calling it the care economy crisis. How does that manifest in the context of the public finances we've talked about, the modest gains in employment that we've been talking about, and the shifting picture of the public sector as an employer?
So I think that's a really good question, because this is something that's been quite topical around the care economy because of our gendered norms in our country and I guess across the world, that care work is generally borne by women. And in South Africa's context, it is particularly women-headed households. And so we see, nurses are overwhelmingly women. Over 90% of nurses are women. Over, I think, 85% of teachers as well. So we have those sectors, and community health workers are also overwhelmingly women. And so we have these sectors that are opportunities or areas where women can find gainful employment or interventions that can to address this gendered unemployment crisis. But it really requires commitment by government and a recognition of that, and more than just once-off injections, or as we can see with the figures, that we have a structural problem of long-term unemployment. But it's really about investing and introducing opportunities for long-term building opportunities for women, young Black women. I think another aspect of the care economy, or ways that women disproportionately bear the burden of the interventions like austerity, is that when the state pulls back supports, when they reduce the quality of education, health services, so that we can pay off our ballooning debt servicing costs, it is women who typically fill the gap, who mask that burden and the impact of that when they take their children to the clinic or whatever it is, they mask that burden. And so we have this double crisis when it comes to austerities, that it reduces the employment or opportunities to participate in the economy for young Black women, but they then have a much greater share of care work that they bear.
All right, Matsiriso, thank you for your time this morning and those insights. You've gotten us thinking, certainly ahead of the Budget 2026. That's Matsiriso Lingwasa, member of the Budget Justice Coalition.
The Blues are going all out for maximum points at Stamford Bridge.
Stevaus flipped it back to him. The Brazilian connection working nicely. João Pedro for two, and he's done it. The Blues Brazilians at the double here.
However, it is a must-win game for the Clarets to try to escape from the danger zone.
Deflected and in! Oh, Burnley lead! Sharp lead for the Clarets. Bashir Humphries will claim it. It's got a deflection, and Burnley have got an early lead here.
This is the Premier League. Chelsea FC versus Burnley FC, the Saturday 21 February at 4:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC 3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
It's time to say yes to Montreux Jazz Festival Franschhoek, happening in Franschhoek from the 27th to the 29th of March 2026. It is 3 days. 2 stages, the Archers and Jazz Village, and a jazz-inspired multi-genre experience, plus a chilled Sunday slowdown to close, featuring the legendary Salif Keita, Herbie Tswayedi, Andile Yenana, Ayanda Segate, Sisonke Konti, Madala Gunene, and Sibusile Kaba, plus Mandisi Jantjis, Billy Monama, Kasivan Naidu, Moses Mokhale, Vusi Mahlasela, and more than 20 additional artists still to be announced. This is where Montreux meets Africa. Tickets are now on sale at Ticketmaster or visit mjfsa.com in partnership with the SABC.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
All right, let's turn to the Gabinde inquiry into the fitness to hold office of the South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions. Allegations against former Cato Manor SAPS unit members that once seemed to have been dead and buried seem to be rumbling back to life at the Gabinde inquiry. This says the inquiry has now gone into a phase where Advocate Andrew Chauke's legal team are now leading their own witnesses. Watching all of that for us is SABC News reporter Ufensa Stimo, who joins us now for an update. Ufensa, good morning. I'd like you to just outline for us just the extraordinary turn. This is meant to be about Andrew Chauke's fitness or otherwise to hold office, but it seems at this point the focus is now squarely on whether or not the NPA moved on from that chapter of allegations against the Cato Manor SAPS unit and did so improperly. Tell us how it has played itself out.
Good morning to you and the listeners too as well. This whole thing actually emanated from former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Samila Batoyi, actually conceding under cross-examination that her decision to withdraw racketeering charges against the Cato Manor Serious and Violent Crime Unit and former KZN Hawks boss, Major General Johan Boysen, was not based on her perusing the dockets, but rather her being advised by a panel of experts. There was a DCOC report which was compiled, which she attributed her decision to drop racketeering charges on. Now, the issue came when there were ballistic reports inside the docket, which actually, discredited the police's statement that when they actually shot some of the suspects they were targeting, they were doing so in self-defense. Some of the ballistic reports in those dockets, which Advocate Shamila Batoyi did not actually peruse, have witness statements, eyewitness accounts, which are attributing to a statement where they would say that the Cato Manor Police Unit was actually in cahoots with the Stenga Taxi Association, which was a rival association to the KwaMaphumulo Taxi Association. Now, what happens is that there was a superintendent, Zetembe Tonko, who was actually impartial in sort of arresting the issue of taxi violence in KZN. He was killed. And immediately after he was killed, we understand that ballistic reports explained that he was killed using an R4 rifle, which is an official firearm for the police. But then, to a certain extent, the Cato Manor Police Unit alleged that the KwaMaphumulo Taxi Association members were the ones responsible for Tonko's murder. And that's when this whole killing spree actually started. Now, Advocate Sello Mahema, who was the lead prosecutor in the racketeering charges when they were subsequently dropped, he actually broke down yesterday, getting emotional about the level of brutality which was leveled out against people, some of whom were actually not implicated in the murder of Zetembe Tonko.
In fact, Ufensa, say a bit more about Advocate Mayema and his role. You say he's a former prosecutor in the racketeering charge, but is appearing and testifying on the side of Advocate Chauke, is he?
Yes, and in fact, he was facing similar charges just for being part of the team that was prosecuting the racketeering case against Major General Johan Boysen and the Cato Manor Police Unit. He was also charged with the fact that he was pursuing a racketeering charge where there was no evidence at all. But this assertion that there was no evidence at all was made by, the NDPP, who did not actually go through the dockets, which had all the information pertaining to what was happening. So there was a prosecution team which was appointed to pursue these racketeering charges. And in fact, the then KZN DPP, which is Director of Public Prosecution, Muiponi Noko, was also part of the team. She as well testified at the inquiry just before Sello Mahema came. She as well was apparently charged with, leveling those charges against the Cato Manor Police Unit. So it seems as though the whole team that was involved in prosecuting this matter were all charged upon the withdrawal of those charges by Advocate Shamila Batoyi. And something that came out this week as well was that Shamila Batoyi herself was the Director of Public Prosecution in KZN when some of these matters actually started, around 2008. That was before she left for The Hague, where she took over, where she got another position.
Ufensa, I'm out of time, but I do want us to touch on just the turn in terms of the evidence and the leading of forensic and ballistic evidence. It's almost as if it's a trial because we're getting a level of detail that I don't think we had gotten before on what exactly the allegations were against the Cato Manor Serious Crimes Unit?
Absolutely. As I mentioned that, the dockets are the ones that have opened up a can of worms, relating to the issues that have actually happened. There was a certain Bongani Mkhize, for instance, who had an urgent application to interdict the police from killing him. And Major General Johan Boysen actually opposed that particular application. And eventually, Mr. Mkhize was killed in a rather questionable manner where a gun was actually placed on the scene, and the ballistic report actually contradicted what the police were saying. So there's a lot of evidence that was overlooked when the racketeering charges were subsequently dropped. That's why Advocate Mahema was saying that the current NDPP can actually reinstate those charges based on the information that has come out at the inquiry.
All right, Ofense, thank you for that update. Do yourself a favor. Go on YouTube if you can. Give yourself time to catch up on that testimony. In fact, Ofense is right. Start when the former NDPP was testifying. Go to the aspect where she was being asked about these allegations and the concessions that she was making under cross-examination by Advocate Ngukai Tobi. Then pick up on the testimony of the last 2 weeks. The level of detail and just how this whole plot twist will really leave you astounded. I'm a bit late. Let me go to Ann Musa. Good morning to you, Ann.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, former Northwest Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Selo Mahema, will continue to testify before the Gabinde inquiry in Pretoria today. Yesterday, he said former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batoy, took the decision to have charges against members of the Cato Manor Police Unit withdrawn. Suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Cedric Sibiya is set to appear before the Gabinde Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. He's accused of ties to Katiso Katie Mulife and Vuzimuzi Kat Matlala, alleged key players in organized crime. And US Vice President J.D. Vance has given a cautious assessment of the latest talks on Iran's nuclear program. He told the media the indirect discussions in Geneva went well in some ways. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a reminder, there are two routes to avoid through Joburg this morning if you possibly can. One is the Mike 1 going north up to Sandton. It's really heavily backed up. There are some lane closures around Corlett Drive, which are an overrun from last night. That's causing a really big backlog all the way from Boysons. There's no gaps this morning in that run through towards Sandton. The other big one is the N3 going north. Stationary truck inside Galuli's interchange. You come off the N3 and want to turn out to the airport or Boksburg, and that delay is all the way back to the N12, almost Reading interchange in Alberton. So that's another major disaster in terms of heavy traffic to avoid today. Queues on the N12 leaving Benoni through towards Boksburg. Big queues down to around Rondebolt Road this morning after an earlier crash, but it stays really heavy. Midrand, Olifantsfontein out towards the M1 highway is bad. R55 from Blue Hills down into Crowthorne. That's really bad. The main road arriving up into Kyalami from Lone Hill, also very busy as well. Crash in on Pretoria's N1 North at Garsfontein. That's a backlog from the R21, as well as some onlooking going southbound, having a look at that crash as well. Durban, the N2 North, you'll have to give yourself plenty of time to get through it all today. From Cement Factory to Westwood Mall, that is heavy. And then from Queenlandy Drive right up to a breakdown before Gateway, there's another major delay. So two big queues to work through. Breakdown at Key Ridge on your way out to Pietermaritzburg, so that's slow. Stationary truck pretty much in the middle of the highway there. Cape Town, the Mfuleni area, very slow. Crash on Old Fora Road at Muway, causing really big delays and disruption there. And heavy all approaches into Stellenbosch, particularly Adam Tusk coming up from the Kales River side of Polka Drive, and the R44 riding in from Somerset West to Stellenbosch Central, very heavy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you. So we are underway with the Proteas against the UAE, and you're saying that they've rung in some changes in the team.
Yeah, Tulas, let's take you live now to Delhi. UAE are 7 without loss after the opening over. Kagiso Rabada with the new ball, and there was an early boundary to Arnya Sharma, who's on 7. South Africa won the toss and we chose to bowl first at the Arun Jaitley Stadium. Remember, the Proteas are already through to the Super 8 and they're looking to wrap up the group stage unbeaten this morning. So looking forward to seeing the likes of the newbies that will be joining, the so-called newbies in the squad. And you can look forward to seeing Anrik Nokia, Kwena Mapaka, as well as George Linder returning in this match where South Africa chose to bowl first after winning the toss. Let's go to soccer news, and there's been plenty to look forward to when it comes to Stellenbosch FC. They are back at the Dani Craven Stadium tonight. Coach Gavin Hunt is embracing the chaos. It's 5 matches in just 12 days for Stellies, but Hunt says the rhythm comes from regular football and not rest. They play bottom place Magesi at 7:30 tonight.
No, I think it's important for players not to have too much breaks in between games. Even a week is long. We need some midweek games, and it's good for us. Good or bad. I always say to you, when you lose, you want to play, and when you win, you want to play. So let's get playing games. Obviously, the problem I have is new coach, new preparation. I'm not much preparation all the time. Obviously, you can't be doing too much because of the time shortened. But obviously, I've got to just rely on experience a lot of things. To try and get us the best team out there for the situation.
And Stellenbosch have also secured the signings of former Orlando Pirates defender Olise Ndah on a free transfer. The 28-year-old Nigerian's international. He joins after 4.5 seasons at Pirates and looks to strengthen the defensive operations. Now he will debut tonight when Stellenbosch host Magesi FC. The Premier Soccer League has ordered urgent upgrades to the Dr. Petrus Molemela Stadium in Bloemfontein after the pitch failed inspection. The shutdown forces both Marumo Gallants and Siwelele to relocate upcoming matches. Gallants will move their 1st of March home clash against Durban City to Lucas Moripa Stadium in Atteridgeville. Siwelele's 28th of February fixture against TS Galaxy will be played at an alternative venue. Now, Mamelodi Sundowns will face Stade Malien of Mali in the CAF Champions League quarterfinals next month. The Brazilians host the first leg between the 13th and 15th of March before travelling to Bamako for the return leg. And finally, Coco Gauff has bounced back from her early Doha exit with a straight sets win over Anna Kalinskaya in Dubai. 6-4, 6-4. She now faces Elise Mertens in the last 16. More tennis with the Australian Open champion Elena Rybakina cruising past Kimberly Burrell 6-1, 6-2. That's your sport. We'll serve it up. More top of the hour. I'm Sai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again, in Dowling. The quarterly labor force survey is out and it looks promising.
That's right, Thulas. The jobless rate slightly improving in the fourth quarter of 2025. Nothing to write home about, but important to note that this is the second consecutive quarter where we are seeing an improvement there. Coming in at 31.4%, that's the unemployment rate, from 31.9% in Q3. Now, Stats SA says the improvement follows the addition of 44,000 jobs over the period. However, the broader picture remains difficult, particularly for the youth. Youth unemployment remains high, with many under 35s still struggling to find their first job, reinforcing concerns about structural challenges in the labor market. Now, discouraged work seekers increased by 233,000 to 3.7 million, pushing the potential labor force to 4.6 million. Those outside the labor force now total 17.1 million. Formal sector employment rose by 320,000 jobs, while informal sector employment declined by 293,000. Now, gains were recorded in community services, construction and finance, while trade, manufacturing and mining shed jobs. Interestingly, when looking at regions, Western Cape posted the strongest employment growth, while Gauteng recorded the biggest decline. Now, that, of course, comes amid renewed focus on job creation following President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address, where he acknowledged that unemployment remains a matter of national concern.
I'm going to go out on a limb here in Dowling and say that Afrimet is in construction, if I'm not mistaken. Are they?
They just made a comeback into construction with an acquisition of Lafarge.
Look at you trying to accommodate me. So I'm way off the line. I'm way off the mark.
Listen,
and you're now trying to. You
player.
didn't do too badly.
A
tell me about
player, all right?
A diversified player.
Yes, yes. So it has assets within mining, particularly iron ore. It does business with AMSA as well. So we are seeing the group really buckling under pressure due to the current macroeconomic conditions, especially when it comes to those industrial players. In its pre-close update, the group said weak growth and a surge of cheap imports are squeezing customers and weighing on its performance. The shutdown of ferrochrome smelters forced its Nkomati anthracite mine into temporary closure, cutting local volumes, while its aggregates business is holding up and iron ore takeoff from AMSA has improved. Now, Afrimet says the broader environment remains fragile, and to get its balance sheet in order, the company is refinancing debt, selling non-core assets, and pushing ahead with its Glenova rare earth project. But it stressed that policy decisions and fair competition will ultimately determine how quickly the local industry can recover. In more positive news, it is seeing a bit of a turnaround within its cement business. While volumes are improving, that unit is still loss-making. Markets did not like that update, punishing the company overnight as its share closed 7% lower.
Lastly then, Dowling, let's recap where we stand in the markets at this hour.
So starting in Asia, trade volumes thin due to the Lunar New Year. So focus is on Japan and the Nikkei recovering today following global peers and trading 1.2% higher. And over in Wall Street, futures are in the green. Caution, however, remains ahead of the Fed minutes that report out later today. Coming back home, trade taking a knock due to easing precious metal prices, gold, silver, and PGMs under pressure, and that leading to the all-share closing 1.3% lower. The rand not spared, also trending lower this morning at 16.01 to the dollar, 21.70 to the pound, and 18.96 to the euro. Lastly, in commodities, oil trading slightly higher, above $66 a barrel. Gains, however, are capped with investors assessing developments between Iran and the US.
All right, Dowling, thank you for that. We'll talk to you one more time just after 8:30. In that update, as she always does, Dowling will give you a look ahead in terms of the kind of trading day you can expect on this Wednesday.
Ezimnyama Ngenkani want to be remembered for stopping the reigning champions. However, Masandawana believe the Buccaneers will experience a long night of sadness. This is the Betway Premiership. Listen, forever. Catch the big clash between Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns on Wednesday, 18 February at 6:30 p.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC3. Then at 7:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Eskom is upgrading old electricity meters with modern smart meters, giving you clarity, control, and confidence. With your new meter, you'll be able to see your usage in real time, giving you the power to manage your electricity with ease. Smart meters are accurate and help Eskom respond faster to issues. Please allow their authorized installers access to install your new meter. For more information, visit the Eskom website. Eskom, redefining for a better future.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let me take a few of your voice notes. I see here someone wants to talk about Alan Busak.
Good morning, Thulas, and all listeners as well. Thulas, you know how surprised I am in reading on social media the words of Mr. Alan Busak concerning Mr. Cyril to step down. And I would really, really adore what you having Mr. Pusak on the radio for you to put his words that everybody hear, because how long a time, and now too, as known analysts and of course pastors are also calling that Mr. Cyril Pinocchio must step down because there is about nothing he has done or given us. Pepilon Aldos.
Papillon, thank you for that. All right. That is not a bad suggestion at all, Reverend Alan Busak. Let's see if we can work it in the coming days. Someone else wants to reflect on monarchs as a concept, I suppose.
Good morning to us and the listeners. This is Nati from Cape Town. To us, on my mind today, man, I just want to ask about this thing. Why do we call them monarchs if ever we're not going to give them the power? With regards to this Dalinjebo thing, you remember like in the UK, yes, they stripped Prince Andrew of his powers due to like, okay, yes, or what was involved in Epstein files. Why we can't afford King Dalinjebo the same similar powers to strip Mandela and the other houses if ever they don't toe the line? Thank you.
Yeah, look, there's a dispersal of power across all institutions in our country. Remember, we don't have absolute monarchs in this country. We don't have the kind of situation that they have in Eswatini, for example, where the king's word is final, okay? If you don't like it, you can jump. In this country, we disperse power generally in all institutions. Remember, these institutions operate within the Constitution, and it needed to be so, really, given the trajectory and the path we have traversed and the desires of people, even people who live according to customary ways of living, needed to enjoy the fruits of democracy. So it's a compromise. Recognize the monarchy, but at the same time operating within the framework of the Constitution, where no person is meant to have absolute power. So as a result, you have the traditions and customs, but then there's legislation that then comes into how that monarchy exercises its authority. So it's the system we chose as compared to absolute monarch. There are very few absolute monarchs in the world remaining. In this region, for example, it's Eswatini, and you will not find another one because others will have this mix, this hybrid system where there's a prime minister and a parliament and people can vote, etc., etc. Let me go to Ntlantla in Pietermaritzburg. Good morning to you, Ntlantla.
Thank you, Mguni, for taking my call.
Good morning.
Mguni, I would like to talk about NSFAS.
Yes.
We have got a son who was doing his third year at DUT. Now, they've rejected him. He have tried to appeal. During that time, when they were asking them to appeal, he owes for about 5.2 for 2 semesters. Now, this student is a B student. Now they've rejected him. Me and his mom, we live with disability, we are blind. And we don't have this 5.2 thousand for those semesters which he owes the school. Now, NSFAS, they are throwing him away to say they can't help him. Also, registration fee, they said, is it about 5,600?
Yeah.
We don't have. Both me and his mom, if we combine our disability grant, it's 5.4, 5.3. So we can't afford to pay him for his school fees. And this boy, he does respect. He's got a good character. He loves schooling. And he passed the last year around 75%. So I'm just appealing to NSFAS if they can help us with this boy to finish up his studies, because we are living with a disability.
What year is he in, Tlantla?
He's a third year.
Third year, oh my goodness.
And he's doing internal auditing.
That is distressing. That is distressing. Having gone that far with the studies. Ntlantla, stay on the line in case someone calls back and says they would want to be able to assist you. That's Ntlantla in Pietermaritzburg there. Let's see if anyone can respond to the plight. And I imagine that there are many other people, of course, because isn't it what they call defunding? That, I don't know, NSFAS will have to explain what happens if I'm eligible for funding in first year and in second year, unless my parents gain employment and they suddenly earn a whole lot of money. I don't know, unless the situation really changes. What then changes such that you are not funded for the third year or further year. Something there feels like needs to be explained. Nhlanhla in Pietermaritzburg, thank you for raising that. Let's take Rob before we go to our next story.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Yeah, quick update, a reminder of two very heavy backlogs moving through Joburg going to the north this morning. The Mike 1, the roadworks between Corlett and Grayston Drive that overran from last night, still there, really solid from Boysons all the way through to Sandton. No gaps, heavy enough to queue those approaches, particularly Houghton Drive coming up through the wilds to get into the Mike 1. That's heavy. Corlett Drive all snarled up, Glenhove Road all snarled up, just trying to get into the Mike 1. Maybe an option like Louis Botha or Rivonia Road will get you through quicker, but those routes are both under pressure with extra traffic. The other big one is the truck that was stuck at Galuli's N3 north to the N12. It's being cleared, but the N3 queues right back to about Reading interchange on the N12 coming out of Alberton this morning. So disaster there. The N12 from Benoni through Boxburg up to Rondebolt Road stays heavy. And the M1 north from 14th Avenue around to Rivonia. Lots of traffic there as well today. Pretoria's N1 north, a crash before Garsfontein. That's very slow coming up from Boer to Avenue side. Big backlogs on the M1 south from Montana all the way down to Linwood Road. Looking very busy as well. Durban, two very big queues to work through this morning on your way to the airport. One is the run to Westwood Mall. That queue back at around about the cement factory this morning up through Spaghetti Junction, and then a breakdown before Gateway. So your second queue is from Queen Nundy Drive all the way through to that Umhlanga off-ramp. Cape Town, N1 fairly heavy, sitting from Belleville right through to the Woodstock exit this morning down to Lower Church, and that just means pressure on Kuberg Road and Marine Drive coming into the highway through Brooklyn and Parton Island. And the R300's heavy today from Delft all the way up to the N1 highway at Brackenfell. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This February, fall in love with friendships that feel like family. Old bonds, new beginnings, and chapters that remind us why love, in all its forms, matters. The story comes full circle in The Best Man, the final chapters, where love, loyalty, and life collide one last time. Because some stories stay with you long after the final scene. The Best Man, the final chapters, weeknights 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
7 minutes to 8. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, the veteran U.S. civil rights leader, Baptist minister, and two-time U.S. presidential candidate, has died at the age of 84, and this has been confirmed and announced by his family. In a statement, the family described him as a servant leader, not only to our family, they said, but to the oppressed, the voiceless, and the overlooked. A towering and sometimes polarizing figure in American public life for more than 5 decades, Jackson rose to prominence during the civil rights movement of the 1960s and went on to become one of the most recognizable political activists in the United States. Let's reflect on his life and legacy. Brooks Spector is international relations expert and joins me now for that conversation. He personified, didn't he, the civil rights movement, the fight for liberty and equal rights in the United States. How do you reflect and sum up the life and legacy of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson?
Well, good morning and good to be with you. I met him in South Africa in 2013. He was here to get a National Honors Award from the South African government. And we talked in a hotel in Pretoria. And as he walked across the lobby to meet me, I remember this is Pretoria. This is a fancy hotel. Everybody from hotel guests to waiters to the people, emptying trash bins, they were all chanting to him, "Run, Jesse, run," or "Higher Rev." He had how should we put it? He had an international aura about him that was unusual, maybe not unique, but certainly unusual. He was eminently recognizable almost anywhere, and he had a galvanizing effect, and with the footnote that sometimes a divisive one, as you point to, on the American political system beyond simply the questions of civil rights / human rights. One of the biggest impacts is something he did not do. He did not win the nomination for president on the Democratic Party ticket twice, but his run changed the dynamic of the way in which the presidency was fought. Up until that point, most primary elections, you won the delegation or you lost it. And after Jackson, you won on a percentage basis, which opened the door for other candidates to succeed, at least in part. And most importantly, he opened the door for another candidate 20 years later, also from Chicago, a youngish senator by the name of Barack Obama, who almost certainly would not have been able to run and win had Jackson not run and not succeeded.
So he was, of course, a peer of the late Martin Luther King Jr. and others of that generation, your John Lewis and the likes. Tell me about that strand of leadership in the civil rights movement and what it symbolized, and perhaps are we seeing with the passing on of Jesse Jackson the end of an era or the beginning of the end of an era?
Well, the names you mentioned, Ralph Abernathy, Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, important to note that they were all ordained ministers. And so much of the wellspring for the civil rights movement came out of a religious background. And it was ecumenical. It wasn't simply Black Southern Baptists in march after march and circumstance after circumstance. There was a unified version of many faiths and many religious figures who fell in line together in the protest and the action. And it is true, I think, that with his passing, pretty much the last of the religious figures who could automatically gain a certain stature from their religious background translated into political context, that seems to have disappeared, perhaps because religion is less prominent in American politics. That's a question. On the other side of things, religion seems to have been harnessed now, most recently, to the hard right, with people who use religion as a tool in their political efforts. So yes, and I think you're quite right that a generation passes and a way of thinking about the way religion and civil rights are conjoined at the hip, that's also passed.
I'd like you to reflect on a key phrase that I've been hearing in reflections, certainly here at home, has been that he was a quote-unquote friend of South Africa. Why is that apt and why does that keep coming to the fore?
Well, I know you're pressed on time, but fairly early on in his career, he took on the idea that the liberation in South Africa was part and parcel to the larger liberation of humanity. And so any number of protest marches, any number of demonstrations, any number of other kinds of actions related to South Africa's great change were part of Jesse Jackson's arsenal as well. Did he make specific political policy effects? No, but he galvanized people into thinking about how the connections were there between a movement in one country. Sorry, I was lost for words there for a second. Movement in one country necessarily reflected and was part of a movement in another, and in other words, universalizing the effort that he felt was crucial and central to his own mission. But let's also remember that he had a keen political mind. He managed to build what was called the Rainbow Coalition of Black, brown, young people, females, into a potent political idea, not necessarily a formal organization, but an idea of the way in which politics would change in America. And that's a legacy too.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time and your insights as always. Brooks Spector, International Relations Expert. Brings us to 8 a.m. Let's go straight to N. Musa.
Outsurance is in the business of saving you money on your car insurance premium. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
Thanks to us. In our top stories, Advocate Mayema to continue testimony at the Gabinde inquiry, and SAMU slams Ekurhuleni for its decision to vet EMPD officers. Good morning. Former Northwest Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Selo Mayema, will continue to testify before the Gabinde inquiry in Pretoria today. Yesterday, he said former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batoy, took the decision to have charges against members of the Katamana police unit withdrawn. This despite what he claimed was overwhelming evidence against the unit. KwaZulu-Natal Hawks boss Johan Boysen had led the unit which had been accused of the murders of members of the KwaMapumulo Taxi Association in 2008. Mayema says Advocate Batoy's successor, Advocate Andy Mutibi, must revisit the issue.
I would say the most appropriate, just to remove any ambiguity, any uncertainty, if I were in the shoes of Advocate Mutibi, which I'm not, and I do not envy those shoes, I would approach court because the decision was made by somebody on the same level as myself. If he were to have the views that I share that the decision is invalid, I would then approach court and say, this is the circumstances under which I believe the decisions are void. Can we have a declaratory order declaring one way or another, just to remove any ambiguity?
Suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Geopolitical is set to appear before the Matlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. He's accused of ties to Katiso Katie Mulife and Vuzimuzi Kat Matlala, alleged key players in organised crime. Witnesses who have testified have suggested the ties involve an alleged flow of money and protection. Sibia has denied any wrongdoing. Sibahle Mota reports.
At the sense of corruption allegations made against General Sibia are the 121 dockets taken from the political killings task team. General Sibia has been accused of moving the dockets from KwaZulu-Natal to the national office in Pretoria, resulting in investigations being halted. Various witnesses who have testified before the Matlanga Commission have stated that Sibia had no authority to effect this move. The Matlanga Commission is investigating allegations of corruption in law enforcement agencies and the infiltration of alleged criminal cartels in these institutions. I am Sibahle Mota in Pretoria.
The South African Municipal Workers Union, SAMU, has slammed the city of Ekurhuleni for vetting over 3,000 EMPD officers without necessary consultation. The vetting process, which began on Monday, comes after witnesses that have testified before the Matlanga Commission of Inquiry made allegations of corruption in the EMPD. SAMU claims the process is unfair and lacks transparency. Chris Mavundla is the union's regional secretary.
We, as South African Municipal Workers Union, reluctantly welcome this process because we're not consulted. And you'll understand that once you introduce this thing of annual vetting to our employees, it then becomes a condition of service. So the employer has no right to unilaterally change the terms and conditions of employment without consulting. Anything that has got the potential to change the terms and conditions of employment must be the subject of consultation between the parties.
The ANC Youth League in Gauteng has slammed the Provincial Education Department over unpaid municipal electricity bills. Schools in Ekurhuleni have been left without power. In a strongly worded statement, the League has described the situation as unacceptable, saying learners are now forced to study in the dark due to the department's failure to settle accounts with the city of Ekurhuleni. The League's provincial spokesperson is Khotso Pue.
This matter is a matter of concern for us, as it also hinders on the democratic right of an African child, which is the right to basic education. It's a human right. It's a fundamental right which is enshrined in the Constitution and Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which is the Bill of Rights. Yes. So we would want to engage on this matter and see how best can we find an amicable solution to resolve the matter jointly with the Gauteng Department of Education.
And finally, US Vice President J.D. Vance has given a cautious assessment of the latest talks on Iran's nuclear program. Vance told the media the indirect discussions in Geneva went well in some ways.
We would very much like, as the president has said, to resolve this through a conversation and a diplomatic negotiation. But the president has all options on the table. And, one thing about the negotiation I will say this morning is, in some ways it went well. They agreed to meet afterwards. But in other ways, it was very clear that the president has set some red lines that the Iranians are not yet willing to actually acknowledge and work through.
Recapping the top story, former Northwest Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Selo Maema, will continue to testify before the Gabinde inquiry in Pretoria today. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
February may be a shorter month, but with Outsurance, your car insurance savings could go the distance. Like 35-year-old Zanai, who saves a whopping 1,180 Rand on her 2017 Mercedes-Benz GLA. Get a quote now, and if Outsurance can't save you money, ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Outsurance, licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headline. Let's go live to Delhi, where the Proteas have made early inroads after choosing to bowl the United Arab Emirates. They are on 42 for the loss of, that's 48 now, for the loss of 2 wickets. And we also bring you athletics news. Helder Steyn on being the favourite for the Two Oceans Marathon. We'll have the details around 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're just joining us, the Mike 1 North should really be avoided. There's some very extreme backlogging going on from Boysons all the way through to Santon. It's the roadworks that have overrun from last night at Corlett Drive. 2 lanes are closed. Traffic backs all the way to Boysons. Behind that, the M2 trying to get into the Mike 1 at Crown pushes back queues to Joe Slovo. Houghton Drive getting in, Glenhove Road, Ivy Road coming through. All of those routes, even Corlett Drive that link into the Mike 1 are really under pressure. And the side roads, Louis Botha probably okay. Rivonia Road up through Randburg, up through Rosebank and Ilovo on your way to Santon as an alternative is pretty heavily backed as well. The N12, N3 remains a problem between Alberton and Edenvale. Some big traffic going that way this morning as well. Crash on Pretoria's N1 North up at Grasfontein earlier. Traffic heading that way, slow from Botha Avenue. Southbound from Montana down to Linwood Road looking quite heavy as well. Durban, the N2 under real pressure this morning if you're heading from the south coast towards the airport. Big queues up to Westwood Mall. More queues from Queen Lundy Drive up towards the Gateway exit. And Cape Town, heavy pressure around the Asler Park area of Somerset West on the N2. Some really big queues going out, but also inbound. Looks like there might be some traffic light troubles at Hazelden Drive. And the M1 inbound, Belleville through to about the city centre. Well, Woodstock really is the heavy traffic behind that. Marine Drive from Milnerton. Very slow to get into town this morning. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
10 minutes after 8. Welcome to the third hour of the Morning Brief. This time I'll get it right. Not on this Monday, but on this Wednesday. It is great to be in your company. Lots of messages coming through. Let me start with the one, let me start on a high note. Right? That's truly heartwarming. Sungari in Durban says, Dear Thulasizwe, I want to give 2,000 rand towards Nhla's son, towards his registration fee. I'm a pensioner, but can help. Isn't that beautiful? Remember, we took that call from Nhlanhla, who was talking about the difficulties in Nhlanhla in Pietermaritzburg, difficulties they are facing around NSFAS and the funding for their son in third year of that qualification. That is to do with accounting, if I recall correctly. So Sangari says, will contribute 2,000 rand. I'm a pensioner, but I can help. So I really appreciate that. So we'll try and make the connection and get them connected and see how that can be facilitated. Then, linked to that, someone else puts out a challenge to the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. SAICA, you've been called out. Someone says, can't SAICA help the young man and his parents? That's the question. So that's been put out there. The other issues, of course, that are on the table varied, as you can imagine. And I'm interested in seeing that a lot of you are still reflecting on King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo. Naveen in Durban, for example, says, we need to get rid of all monarchy now and use their funding for real change. Kings and queens, what an archaic concept and a waste of taxpayers' money, says Naveen. And then someone else also on the issue of King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo says, hi Thulas, who is this King Dalindyebo? Is he the same Dalindyebo who is king of Abatembu, who smokes dacha and is quote-unquote charwok half the time? Tell me, Thulas, who would want to listen to that type of person, let alone make him king, says Anonymous in Gqeberha. Okay, exact same king of Abatembu, King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo. As for him and what he smokes, I think he owns it. I've heard him owning it. He's not ashamed. The other time I heard him say, years ago, I think, he said, pointing at a journalist and says, here's this journalist who's always calling me Dacha King. So I think he's well aware of that and how he's framed in some of the national conversations. Then let me read two quick ones on what's coming out of the Gabinde inquiry. Lindiwe says, and Lindiwe, I will edit your message for you slightly, not too much. Lindiwe says, years back, Al Jazeera showed the documentary on Cato Manor atrocities, allegedly, that's where the edit comes in. I've added allegedly for you, allegedly by Johan Boysen and his gang. But there was no investigation and arrests. Thanks to Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's whistleblowing, the Cato Manor crime is resuscitated. Johan Boysen and Shamila Batoyi must be called to the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Another one for Madlanga. And then lastly, Felix in Midrand says, the Cato Manor saga, Cato Manor squad issue gives SARS rogue unit vibes. The case was already in court with prima facie evidence ready to be tested in court. It wasn't in dispute that some equipment was bought, that NPA officers bugging took place, and that its establishment touched on state security, all of which had to be tested in court. Yet the first thing Batoyi did was to unilaterally withdraw the case. This has come back alongside the Cato Manor one, says Felix in Midrand. So just a variety of issues that people are interested in talking about this morning, and I really appreciate that. So let's keep the conversation going in that spirit. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032, or you can send me a WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 107. Let's get into it. The third hour of the morning brief starts now.
Are you looking for the best spectacle and sunglass deal? With Specsavers buy one get one offer, you get great value for money. Get a free pair of branded single vision prescription sunglasses up to 3,300 Rand when you purchase a comprehensive eye examination and spectacle frames with lenses on your first pair. The best part? Choose from top brands like Police, Hugo, Under Armour, Tommy Hilfiger, Red Bull Specs, and more. Affordable eye care? Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
The Proteas women are pumped up to display top-class cricket and emphasize that they are unbreakable. However, the women in green are confident their presence will be felt. This is the one-day international encounter. Witness the first ODI between South Africa and Pakistan on Sunday, 22 February at 9:30 a.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC 3 with reports on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This message is brought to you by Eskom, redefining for a better future.
Hey South Africa, want to keep your lights on and save money? Let's use electricity wisely. It's easier than you think. Switch off lights when you leave a room, unplug chargers and appliances, and use energy-saving bulbs. They last longer and use less power. Every little bit helps for your home, your wallet, and our planet.
Let's make it a habit and use electricity wisely. Eskom.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
16 minutes after 8. The issue of safety when people use e-hailing services is back in the spotlight. Of course, in the wake of that gruesome murder that was captured on security, on footage. There was the dashcam video that was installed there. It's brought back into spotlight issues of safety around e-hailing, but also reminded us that actually the clock is ticking for e-hailing platforms, including Uber and Bolt, for them to start operating within the frameworks that were announced in September last year by the National Department of Transport under the National Land Transport Amendment Act. So the time is ticking for them to comply with the 180-day compliance deadline fast approaching. Reports suggest that major platforms have yet to complete mandatory registration processes, raising uncertainty for drivers and passengers alike. Let's hear it from Colin Msibi, National Transport Department spokesperson, who joins me now. Good morning to you, Colin, and thank you for your time. So these regulations go back to September last year. We focused on them a bit, and I think we will recap what they provide for. But let's start with an update. Where do we stand in terms of getting compliance and registration, as well as all the other features that are required in terms of those regulations?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and thanks for the opportunity. I think there has been some symbols of problems in terms of the registration of these companies, and of course the issue has been about the requirements in terms of these companies, what they need to do. Part of it, they needed to go to ICASA to get the certification in terms of these apps. So it's obviously a new thing, and obviously you would expect that there could be some problems. And I think last year we issued a statement reminding these companies that they need to register. But up to this far, we're going to issue a statement where we're announcing companies that have registered. And I think that is going to happen towards the end of this month. So I can confirm with you that indeed there's been companies that have come forward to present to the regulator, because they've got to go to the national regulator to present. So we are going to issue a list of companies that have registered their apps. So that's only when the operators would be able to go and apply for the operating licenses. But up to this far, they can't do so without that particular list being circulated to the regulatory entities in the provinces.
Also, say a bit more about that then. The companies themselves, the platforms, need to take the first step, which unlocks compliance by the operators at operator level.
Yes, what happens is that once they've got the certification from ICASA, they've got to go to the regulator to present their apps in terms of how they work. And then they then get the approval from the regulator. What happens then, the regulator would then send the name of that company or the app to the provinces, where the operators, they go to apply for the operating license. So if, in other words, if your company, as Thulasizwe, is not appearing in the list in the province, you can't then get an operating license if you are using that specific app from Thulasizwe and Company. So in other words, you need to be registered with the regulator, and then the database is circulated countrywide to the provincial regulatory entities, and then they have it there. So when you go and apply for an e-hailing operating license, you then say, I'm using this specific app, and that app must show in that database. If it's not there, you won't be able to get your operating license. So basically, that's how it works. So hence, it is important to go register with the regulator, and then your name is then circulated across the country so that whoever is using your app, they should be able to get the operating license.
All right, so then talk to that process after you've published the list of the operators who have registered. Just remind us what the other requirements are and how they speak to perhaps some of the issues that we are seeing playing out at the moment.
Look, the regulations, I mean, you don't have to wait for the registration of the app to do some of the requirements in terms of the regulations. For instance, the issue of putting the panic buttons, the issue of the PRDP that you need to have. So these are the things you would have to do while you wait for the app for the registration of the app. So there were quite a number of the requirements that were stated in the regulations that you would need to fulfill before you can go and apply for the license. But part of it, I think the most of it is actually the conversion of the current, what we call the charter permits and the meter taxi operating licenses, to be converted to the e-hailing operating licenses, because at the moment they are using the permits and the meter taxi operating licenses. So the conversion is what, as we've said, it has to be done within 180 days. So in other words, for you to convert, you've got to go and install the panic buttons. But some of the panic buttons, fortunately, it's within the app that is being registered with the regulator. So probably you would need to use that, but still have a physical panic button in your vehicle. You've got to, for instance, to brand your vehicle accordingly in terms of having a sticker on it, and then. And then, of course, there's also the issues of the PDP. In other words, the drivers must comply in terms of having the PRDPs to apply for it and get approval. And then that's only when you will be able to approaching the PREs in the provinces to be able to get the operating license.
So lastly then, Colin, have you taken cognizance of some of the criticisms of these regulations? For example, the loudest I've heard has to do with the branding of the e-hailing vehicles in a context where law enforcement officials won't always be there on the various routes, various stops, to be able to come to the assistance of e-hailing drivers who say branding will expose them to being specifically targeted by those who oppose their operations and also who are opportunistic in issues to do with crime. In fact, the e-hailing Partners Council are even going as far as to say that they're going to challenge these regulations.
Look, to be honest, I think it's a bit of a double standards. I mean, some of these companies and the vehicles that are being used for e-hailing, they are already branded. And you see quite a huge branding on the vehicle. And all you are saying is that you need to have a sticker. I don't know. I mean, I'm older. Thulasizwe, I mean, if you recall, the taxi industry used to have, even now they do have, a sticker on the side, on the passenger side of the passenger door. A sticker, a small sticker like an A4 sticker, where you would have the details and the address of the operator on that door, on that specific sticker. So when we say branding, we mean that something that says e-hailing and you put the details of the operator. Yeah. We are not saying put the whole
Yes,
for instance, if it's bald, you put something like that.
Yeah.
No, we're
Colin,
not saying that. It's simply a sticker.
But the context was different and is different in that, in the context in which you are talking about, it didn't have the feature of competitors within the public transportation space using violent means. Let me just put it that bluntly. Now, when the vehicle is branded, those who have the propensity to turn to violent means will know exactly which vehicle to target, and they're saying you've not addressed that loophole.
Look, I think it's a valid point because clearly they are being targeted. And I think if there are issues, hence we've been having these workshops, and if there are issues in terms of the stickers that we are talking about for branding, it is something that would have to be revisited. But currently it is in the regulations, and basically I would have to articulate what's in the regulations. So I don't know the results that would come out of the workshops. If indeed there are specific issues of concern from the operators, including the issue of the stickers, it is something that would have to look into as government and see how it can be addressed. But currently, as I say, the status quo is that you've got to have that specific sticker, and it's not the huge branding that people think we're talking about. It's just the sticker on the door to be able to see.
Lastly, I'm sorry, I'm out of time. From the incident that happened in Pretoria West, the killing of that e-hailing driver, are there lessons and gaps perhaps that you've identified? I don't know if the regulations include a requirement to have dash cams installed and perhaps remote recording of that video, etc. Are there lessons that you've picked up from then perhaps think you could have bolstered these regulations a bit more?
Look, I think we've seen the usefulness of the dash cams, and unfortunately, I don't think the regulation speaks to that. So I think it may be something that one has to look into, but I think it is for the safety of the drivers themselves, because to put such dash cams, I think a lot of even other motorists, they do have the dash cams. For us, that is the lesson, and I think it helps as part of the safety feature. It could be something that could be looked into, but to say then it must be a requirement for people to have a dash cam, I think it's a bit taking it too far, but it is something that can be looked into. And I think what happened on Friday is indeed an issue of law enforcement, and I think we would want to commend the police for the arrests that have been made already in this regard. But we take the lesson in terms of having to have those cameras. Yeah.
All right. Colin, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. Colin Msibi speaks on behalf of the National Department of Transport.
You can become a victim of a legal problem: wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
All Scholar transport operators are required to comply with the following mandatory requirements: a valid operating license authorizing the operator to transport passengers on the specified route, a valid operator disc, which must be clearly displayed on the windscreen next to the vehicle license disc, a valid vehicle registration with a current roadworthy certificate confirming that the vehicle is fit, safe, and legally permitted to operate on public roads. Compliance must be reflected on the vehicle license disc. Compliance with these requirements is non-negotiable and is enforced to safeguard the lives of learners and all road users. Issued by the National Department of Transport.
It's time to say yes to Montreux Jazz Festival Franschhoek, happening in Franschhoek from the 27th to the 29th of March 2026. It's 3 days, 2 stages, the Archers and Jazz Village, and a jazz-inspired multi-genre experience, plus a chilled Sunday slowdown to close. It features the legendary Salif Keita, Herbie Tswayedi, Andile Yenana, Ayanda Sigate, Sisonke Konti, Madala Gunene, and Sibusile Xaba, plus Mandisi Dyantyis, Billy Monama, Keseven Naidu, Mos Mokhale, and Vusi Mahlasela, and more than 20 additional artists still to be announced. This is where Montreux meets Africa. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster or visit mjfsa.com in partnership with the SABC. Let's go straight to N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the Social Security Agency, SASSA, in the Western Cape has confirmed the death of a child after a medical emergency outside its Bellville office. The incident happened yesterday. The DA says Gauteng lost 54,000 jobs in the fourth quarter of 2025, the steepest decline of any province. And the former Northwest Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Selo Mahema, will continue to testify before the Gabinde inquiry in Pretoria today. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Still slow getting up into Pretoria today. Just a bit of pressure there between Boerta Avenue and Garsfontein going north after an earlier crash scene. The M1 South coming through Midrand, pretty heavy. Midweek Wednesday delays there between Samrand Road and a breakdown down just before Allendale Road, which is extending that queue. The main road out of Lone Hill up towards the R55 at Kyalami, some really big queues there. There are some roadworks on the R55 in central Kyalami causing delays, which could also be impacting back on that main road. And the other big story as far as Joburg motorists are concerned are the roadworks that overran from last night on the Mike 1 North at Caller Drive. Oh, a couple of lanes are closed. If you're trying to get through to Sandton, there's a queue that starts right back at Boyson's on the Mike 1. It starts around Benrose, Denver on the M2, trying to get into that Crown interchange and join the Mike 1, and all those routes that feed into the Mike 1 under pressure as well. Durban, the M2 running north, still pretty slow towards the Gateway exit. After an earlier breakdown, it is starting to ease, but it's a little bit sluggish. It has pushed a lot of traffic onto Mhlanga Rocks Drive in the M4, so both of those routes heading north are busy. A breakdown at Key Ridge still with us if you're on your way to Pietermaritzburg. That is slow. And Cape Town just heavy on that N1 highway this morning from Bellville all the way through the city centre. Behind that, routes like the N7 north from Goodwood, Coburg Road south from Brooklyn, and the Marine Drive from Milnerton. Those routes getting into the N1 are super heavy today. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning to you. So our eyes are fixated on New Delhi, where the Proteas, you are telling us this morning, are making steady inroads against the UAE.
Absolutely, Thulas. They've been patient, they've been disciplined, and it's very disciplined cricket this morning. The Proteas tightening the screws in Delhi. The UAE are 78 for 3 after nearly 13 overs. The run rate just above 6 and over. So South Africa very much dictating terms here. George Linder, he's been tidy with 1 for 16. Kagiso Rabada searching for his first wicket, but the key here is the pressure. And just remember, the Proteas chose to bowl, and they'll back themselves to chase this down comfortably as they look to head into the Super 8s unbeaten. So good news so far for our Proteas team. Let's go now to news from the soccer front, and we bring Stellenbosch, who are back at the Dani Craven Stadium tonight for the first time since December. And while the schedule is packed, 5 matches in 12 days, Coach Gavin Hunt says rhythm is better than rust, but is cautious because tonight's opponents, bottom place Magesi, are fighting for survival.
Yeah, because of where we are and where they are in the league, it's important for us to obviously, to try and get away from where we are. It's not going to be easy because obviously we've got a few catch-up games. We're like 3 games behind everybody now. So it doesn't mean there's guaranteed points. We need to get, and certainly at home we have to make it count and be really on the front foot and play with good energy and a good purpose.
Meanwhile, Vasco da Gama striker Leandro de Sousa says he's determined to help restore pride of the once famed Cape Town outfit by leading them back to SA's elite ranks. The ABC Motsepe League side have a shot at a place in the Nedbank Cup quarterfinals when they face fellow amateur outfit Jaxa Spears. That's on Sunday in Uppington.
If anyone knows about the weight of the Vasco name, it would be me, because I grew up playing there. I grew up watching Super Siso Zuma play for Vasco in that season. So, yeah, I mean, this team deserves to be playing in the professional ranks of South African football. And I feel like this year we have a really good chance to take it back to where they belong.
On to rugby, and Vincent Koch said the scrum battle will be key when the Sharks face the Lions in Saturday's URC derby at Ellis Park. South Africa's teams dominate the competition scrum statistics, with the Bulls leading at 97% success. The Sharks rank third overall, while the Lions sit sixth. And the six-time Two Oceans Marathon champion Gerda Steyn says she does not consider herself an outright favorite ahead of the 56-kilometer ultra marathon set for the 11th of April at the University of Cape Town. 35-year-old Hollywood Athletics Club runner has welcomed as well the increase in prize money for this year's race, with both the men and women's winners set to pocket 380,000 rand in April.
I think to answer the second question, firstly, the increase in prize money for many, many years, athletes and the supporters of athletes and media have asked Two Oceans about prize money, that there's been no increase for many, many years. So I think with the new, with Stillwater Sport taking the reins in organising the race and the increase in prize money, it is wonderful for the future of the event and also for us as athletes, of course. It was incredibly welcome news.
And finally, we go to the Winter Olympics, where organizers are producing nearly 2.4 million cubic meters of artificial snow. Advanced snowmaking systems are being used to guarantee world-class slopes as climate change has impacted natural snowfall. And that's your sport. We'll be back with John Hediker with more on SAFM. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Dowling, good morning to you. So it's official. MTN is making its move on IHS towers.
That's right, Tula. So what we are seeing is MTN moving to take full control of Africa's largest independent tower operator, IHS. The telecoms group has offered $2.2 billion in cash to buy the 75% stake it doesn't already own, valuing IHS at $6.2 billion. Now, if approved, the company will delist from the New York Stock Exchange, and the move marks a strategic shift for the telecoms operator. Rather than leaning much of its tower infrastructure, or rather leasing much of its tower infrastructure, MTN wants to own it outright, strengthening its network backbone across key African markets. Now, IHS currently derives around 70% of its revenue from MTN, highlighting how closely linked the businesses already are. MTN further added that the deal should lift service revenue, expand margins, and accelerate 5G and fixed wireless rollout. Now, the transaction still requires regulatory approval, but if concluded, it signals MTN doubling down on infrastructure to control to support long-term growth. Now, this announcement was out after markets closed, and initially when there were reports stating that MTN is looking to buy the 75% stake of IHS it doesn't already own, MTN share price tanked. So we're likely to see similar movement at market open today.
A fair amount of interest around ArcelorMittal South Africa in the industry. Does this hold out promise of any kind in relation to the disastrous story we've been telling over the last year and a half?
It seems like it does, Tulas. We are seeing some industry players making an attempt to help stabilize AMSA as pressure, of course, mounts to preserve the country's steel-making capacity. Now, according to reports, Bloomberg in particular, a group of local steel processors has approached the IDC with a proposal to take a stake in parts of the struggling business. The IDC, which already owns about 8% of AMSA, has been in discussions with the company since late 2023, also following the closure of those key mills and ongoing financial strain. Now, the reported plan would see the IDC increase its funding and shareholding, while a strategic local partner steps in to help run operations, potentially boosting domestic ownership of critical industrial assets. While no agreement has been reached, the move, of course, does underscore growing efforts to safeguard jobs and maintain SA's manufacturing base.
Lastly, Ntaoleng, what kind of a trading day can we expect on this Wednesday?
So markets likely to be mixed. The JSE, that is, as we are struggling on the back of easing precious metal prices. In terms of economic data, we get the CPI print for January today, so traders will be looking out for that. Ahead of that print, the under pressure, the rand to the dollar sitting at 16.01, 21.70 to the pound, and 18.96 to the euro. Over in commodities, oil trading slightly higher this morning. It's at $66 a barrel, but there is still some caution at play with investors assessing developments between Iran and the US following yesterday's talks. And then back to equities, trade over in Wall Street is in the green futures. That is, traders are awaiting those Fed minutes. Those minutes will be out later today. And then lastly, in Asia, trade volumes thin due to the Lunar New Year, and focus is on Japan. We did see the Nikkei recovering today. It is on track to close in positive territory.
Zalma has a theory. Let me just attribute it before I'm accused of all sorts of things. Zalma has a theory that the reason why you sounded a bit muzzled for the first 2 hours and the first part of this report is because you were multitasking. You were busy in front of the mirror. This is Zalma's theory, okay?
Busy in front of the mirror. Definitely not in front of the mirror.
I'm hearing from Zalma that you were muzzled because you were holding your phone with your ear while you were busy applying makeup and doing mask. That's Zelma's theory.
Zelma has it wrong. Yes, I was multitasking, but I did not have a mirror. In fact, I'm using another device.
Oh my goodness.
I'm using another device. And so, even shy, technology was...
I see. All right, Ntaoleng, thank you for that. Ntaoleng Lechela has kept you updated on business, economics, and the markets. Well, it would seem you were somewhat right when Zelma. You were not completely off.
When music meets nature, something unforgettable happens. Symphony by the Water, a world-class live music experience set against the breathtaking beauty of Midmar Dam, featuring the KZN Philharmonic Orchestra, Spogazi, the Black Labels, Saturday, the 7th of March, 2026. Day tickets from 150, evening tickets from 350. Tickets available at WebTicket and Pick and Pay. Symphony by the Waters, where sound flows.
This February, fall in love with friendships that feel like family. Old bonds, new beginnings, and chapters that remind us why love in all its forms matters. The story comes full circle in The Best Man, the final chapters, where love, loyalty, and life collide one last time. Because some stories stay with you long after the final scene. The Best Man, the final chapters, weeknights 7 p.m. only on S3 of Beloved.
In life's most challenging moments of loss, compassion can be your greatest comfort. You shouldn't have to face the financial burden of losing a loved one by yourself. Rest assured, Clientele's funeral plans pay out cash within 24 hours. You can cover up to 13 family members on one plan, ensuring all your loved ones are taken care of, and 3 children are covered at no additional cost. With Clientele, you are not just buying a plan, you are also buying peace of mind. When the time comes, you will need to make important calls with your 200 Rand airtime you will receive when you claim. Plans offer double accidental death cover as well as a transport, grocery and unveiling benefit. Apply today, it's easy. There are no medical examinations and no paperwork. SMS SAFM to 48031. That's 48031. Clientele Life is an authorized FSP and licensed life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
All right, let's talk menstrual health at this moment. A new study by the University of the Free State has found that dozens of sanitary pads and panty liners sold in this country contain endocrine disrupting chemicals, so-called EDCs, even when marketed as, quote-unquote, free from harmful chemicals. The findings raise serious questions about product labeling, consumer safety, and regulatory oversight, particularly given the long-term health risks associated with repeated exposure to these substances. Let's speak to Professor Dion Fesser of the Department of Chemistry at the University of the Free State. Prof, good morning and thank you for your time. In your own words, tell me about the work that you did and how you went about it. The study itself is entitled "The Presence of Endocrine Disrupting Chemicals in Sanitary Pads, a Study Done in South Africa." What did you find?
Thank you, Thulasizwe, and good morning to your listeners. This actually comes a long way, and this study is part of a bigger investigation into sanitary health for women who menstruate. It actually came together a few years ago, and I have to say, I'm just we're a big team. I'm almost the only one that doesn't menstruate, and the team really we sat and we were actually listening to a radio station that morning, and it was mentioned that so many young people don't have access to these femcare products. And we said, this can't be. We're sending people to the moon, or we've done that 40 years ago, and we can't make sanitary pads or sanitary health products for them. And that's where the whole story started. And part of that story is to also know what the competition looks like. And not competition. We are not developing a disposable pad at the moment. We're working on a reusable one. But this study is part of our investigation to see what is happening in the South African environment. We've read studies of other places in the world where these chemicals are picked up in sanitary wear, from the disposables up to tampons. And so we said to ourselves, let's find what's happening in the South African market. We took 23 different products, big name brands, and we checked to see what is in there. And all of them came out with at least, some EDCs in them.
Yeah.
Even ones that are marketed as not containing any of this. So that to us is a problem.
Say a bit more about what these endocrine disrupting chemicals are, and should women be concerned? Should we be concerned about them?
Yes. Okay. So they look very similar to the endocrine hormones that is in your body. So if they do get in bloodstream, they actually mimic hormones, and they take the place of the hormones. So they are confusing your hormonal system, and that's where the problems start. And there are health concerns for this. These chemicals can from endocrine disruption up to young females puberty to reach puberty too early, and things like that as well. So they definitely, and they accumulate. The big problem is that they are in the area where they in the genital area is very absorbent skin. It's much more absorbent than the rest of your skin, and so females are extra exposed here, because you can imagine you're using a pad and you're sitting down, so there's pressure, and all these chemicals can really be absorbed. We don't know how much of it is absorbed over a lifetime of menstruation. Normal females will menstruate about 450 times. So that's times 6 for number of weeks. So you can imagine how many of these products are using. But they are also in other personal care products, from shampoos, conditioners, colorants. Yeah.
Are you able to come out then with a message, Prof, to listeners listening this morning who are hearing it and their jaw is dropping and they're concerned about such possible risks as reproductive toxicity, increased cancer risks, and the likes? What's your message to them and also to market? How urgent is the situation for it to be addressed, and is the conversation happening? And what is the big takeout as far as the safety of these pads and panty liner brands is concerned?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I think the main thing I want to tell your listeners is that we're not trying to create a panic here or any big show here. This is science. We've looked at them and we've reported on the results. Now the time is to get the conversation started about female health, and to get manufacturers and regulators talking to each other so that we can get these products cleaned up. It is not necessary that we have them in menstrual health products. They can be made without these chemicals. And they can be made with using natural products. And there should be, and this is a personal opinion of myself, not only myself, but the research team with me, there should be a move to reusable products. Because we are really leaving these sanitary pads and nappies, etc., in the environment, and they stay in the environment for up to 500 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time. So they don't biodegrade. That's a huge extra challenge for us in terms of this. And that's where reusable products would and should, have a double meaning,
all right.
Double whammy for that matter. Yes.
Yeah. All right, Prof. I've got to thank you for your time and thank you for sharing those insights with us this morning. That's Professor Dion Fesser of the Department of Chemistry at the University of the Free State.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on the Mike 1 North today, moving from Joburg Central up through to Sandton. It's roadworks that overran from last night up by Caller Drive that have caused that problem. So really from the Crown all the way up to Caller Drive, it is heavy. Separately, the Mike 1 South, not related to that, but coming through from Woodmead via Marlborough down to Greyston is quite slow as well. Still jam-packed on the N3 between Galulis and Modderfontein Road, and a bit of pressure on the M1 North, just arriving from Rivonia Road up into the Buccleuch interchange for a turn up through towards Allendale Road. Looks like there's a broken down vehicle somewhere in that mix between Buccleuch and Allendale causing that problem. The main road from Lone Hill up to the R55 at Kyalami stays busy, and the R21 quite heavy passing Tembisa into the road construction up by Clayville. Also, if you're coming into Pretoria, crash on Van der Hof at Eskiem Pathleli. So from Pretoria Gardens, that's all quite slow for this time of morning. Heading out of Durban up to Pietermaritzburg, not one but two stationary vehicles around the Key Ridge Cliffdale area, so that's jamming up. The N2 north around Durban, that was busy earlier this morning, has eased up pretty nicely. No major delays on your way to the airport. And Cape Town, bit of mist around, so some routes just going slow because of that. The N1 inbound very busy this Wednesday from Belleville right through to the city centre. Behind that, the N7 north from Goodwood jam to the N1, Kuberg Road and Marine Drive. Those routes coming through Brooklyn and Pardon Island onto that N1. Very heavily backed as well. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
Ezimnyamangenkani want to be remembered for stopping the reigning champions. However, Masandawana believe the Buccaneers will experience a long night of sadness.
This is the Betway Premiership. Lisekazini forever.
Catch the big clash between Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns on Wednesday, 18 February at 6:30 p.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC 3. Then at 7:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Don't pay more than you need to for car insurance. 27-year-old Outsurance client Liam is saving big bucks.
Saving so much every month, around 640 Rand.
That's an amazing 640 Rand saving on Liam's 2024 Ranger. SMS out to 30754. Let's hear how 45-year-old Nivan feels about saving 461 Rand a month on his 2025 VWT Cross.
Save me so much money, 461 Rand.
Nice one. And after 3 claim-free years, you get an out bonus.
So much money.
Get a quote now and see how much money Outsurance could save you. SMS out to 30754. If you don't save, ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Savings or cash. You have nothing to lose with Outsurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Licensed insurer in FSP. TCs and information online.
Get Spar super savings at every store, in every aisle, every day. Buy 1.8 litre Spar ice cream for $49.99, save 25 Rand. Or 1 litre Danone Ultramel custard for $24.99, save 10 Rand. Now that's super savings. Price is valid from 9 till 22 February. While stocks last, only at Spar. T's and C's apply.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
All right, it's coming up to 4 minutes to 9. Let's wrap it up with this story. The Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, and other unions really in the public service are rejecting a 9.8% contribution increase implemented by the Government Employees Medical Scheme, GEMS, describing it as a blatant departure from the scheme's founding mandate to provide affordable health care to public servants. The increase, effective from January this year, has triggered plans for protest action, with unions warning that the cumulative hikes far exceed recent wage adjustments and are eroding workers' real incomes and threatening access to healthcare. Let's speak to Ashley Benjamin, Deputy General Secretary of FEDUSA. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. What's your best understanding of what is the justification for this 9.8% increase, given the other increase that happened last year?
Good morning to you, Thulasizwe, and good morning to the listeners. Well, as FEDUSA and organized labor, we stand united in rejecting a contribution increase that is economically unjustifiable, socially regressive, and inconsistent with the founding mandate of GEMS. This double-digit increase is not in the interest of public servants, taking into consideration the huge increase that they had to endure in 2025. While if there's any challenges with GEMS, one expects the leadership or the board of GEMS to sit around the table, invite the trade unions, invite government as the employer, and find meaningful solutions in the event of a problem. But in this instance, it was a total one-sided approach, and just slapping workers, public sector workers, with an increase that they can ill afford.
Mr. Benjamin, I'm wondering if you have us on speakerphone, and if you do, could I ask you that you hold the phone in your hand, because it just sounds a bit, it doesn't sound as right as it should. What is GEMS telling you about the Okay, it would seem we lost the line there. Did you hear that? When you hear that sound, it's never a good sign. So we're completely out of time. I think let's allow ourselves to rearrange and see if we can come back to this conversation. I don't know if Stanza, do you want to try it? Let's see if we can try and get them back, because part of the conversation is about the cumulative effect of these increases, because last year there was also a significant increase. If I recall correctly, it was somewhere in the region of 13.4%. So I was asking there, Mr. Benjamin, what is the justification from GEMS's side and the pressures that they are saying that the scheme faces from the usage by its members, and in some instances the allegation of abuse by members?
Well, the issues that they're raising, we are not sure if it is in fact real issues. But what we are saying is that if there is any challenges with GEMS, why do you wait 2 years and slap such high increases on workers that has received very, very low increases over a number of years as public servants due to austerity measures. So one expects that in view of the seriousness of this matter, that they will be transparent and accountable and engage the employer and public sector unions to find meaningful solutions. I think they are more concerned about their own interest. Have you noticed that during the past financial year, the GEMS board convened 52 board meetings, whilst the norm is 7 meetings a year? That in itself illustrate that they are more concerned about their own interest and not really concerned about the interest of the workers or the members of the fund. I mean, 23.2% over 2 years increase in medical contributions, whilst the average public servants' wage increase was 5%. It's ridiculous and totally unacceptable. Therefore, we call on the immediate withdrawal of the 9.8% increase from January 2026 and sit around the table and engage us meaningfully in a transparent way to find solutions to the impasse.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. That's Ashley Benjamin, Deputy General Secretary of FEDUSA. That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Kete Mutlahlana and the team on the talking point on standby to take over immediately after the news at 9 with N. Musa. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. You've been briefed.
In our top stories, SASSA clarifies Western Cape child's death and Advocate Mayema to continue testimony at the Gabinde inquiry. Good morning. The Social Security Agency, SASSA, in the Western Cape has confirmed the death of a child at a medical emergency outside its Bellville office. The incident happened yesterday when a woman in a queue with a child alerted officials that the child was critically ill. SASSA spokesperson Shivani Wahab says the officials immediately called for emergency services, but the severity of the situation prompted officials to transport the child to a nearby clinic. SASSA in a statement says that the child subsequently died. The DA says Gauteng lost 54,000 jobs in the fourth quarter of 2025, the steepest decline of any province. This as the unemployment rate sits at 33%, with just over 2.5 million residents out of work. DA leader Solim Simanga has linked the slump to underinvestment that high crime, power and water outages, as well as crumbling infrastructure have caused, especially in central business districts such as Johannesburg. Mike Moriarty is the DA's Gauteng Shadow MEC for Economic Development.
Private is poised and ready because they've got investments. They want to ensure that their assets are improving in terms of their value, but then they get let down by the city, and that's what has to be turned around. So the partnerships are there. We just need an administration that actually comes to the party and does what is required of them with the resources that they have available. They do have the resources available.
The South African Municipal Workers Union, SAMU, says the city of Ekurhuleni should have vetted senior EMPD officers before the ones in lower ranks. The union has slammed the city for vetting over 3,000 EMPD officers without necessary consultation. The vetting process, which began on Monday, comes after witnesses that have testified before the Gabinde Commission of Inquiry made allegations of corruption in the EMPD. SAMU's Regional Secretary Chris Mavundla.
Our understanding is that the fish rot from the head. So if they can start there on top, vet themselves first before they can vet this EMPD on the roads, who are not linked in any way to what is happening in the Gabinde Commission, will have no problem. Why do you start with your constables? Why do you start with your wardens, your inspectors, and not start with you?
Former Northwest Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Selo Mayema, will continue to testify before the Gabinde inquiry in Pretoria today. Yesterday, he said former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamala Batoy, took the decision to have charges against members of the Catomana Police Unit withdrawn. This despite what he claimed was overwhelming evidence against the unit. KwaZulu-Natal Hawks boss Johan Boysen had led the unit, which had been accused of the murders of members of the KwaMaphumulo Taxi Association in 2008. Mayema says Advocate Betoy's successor, Advocate Andy Mutibi, must revisit the issue.
I would say the most appropriate, just to remove any ambiguity, any uncertainty. If I were in the shoes of Advocate Mutibi, which I'm not, and I do not envy those shoes, I would approach court because the decision was made by somebody on the same level as myself. If he were to have the views that I share that the decision is invalid, I would then approach court and say, this is the circumstances under which I believe the decisions are void. Can we have a declaratory order declaring one way or another, just to remove any ambiguity?
And finally, Peru has again been plunged into political turmoil after Congress removed the incumbent president 4 months into his term. Jose Hiri was Peru's 7th president in a decade. He was voted out over undisclosed meetings with a Chinese businessman and the irregular appointment of several women to his government. A protester says she's happy he has been removed.
Very good. Long live Peru. We're always standing, never kneeling. Now I tell my suffering people, which have been subjected to thousands of forms of slavery, never again. Not one more vote to these far-right parties. We will not trust them at all because they've proven their immorality and incapacity.
Recapping the top story, the Social Security Agency, SASSA, in the Western Cape has confirmed the death of a child after a medical emergency outside its Bellville office. The incident happened yesterday. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musam.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
This February, love staying informed. As your day winds down and the evening begins, Primetime News moves to a new home. Weekdays at 6 p.m. The stories that matter, the context you trust, the news that connects you to South Africa and the world. Because loving what you watch also means trusting what you hear. Primetime News airs weeknights at 8 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice. Bite after bite, this is Bake That Thing. Every Friday, we fire up the ovens, featuring South Africa's best bakers and most loved patisserie masters. From sweet showstoppers to savory favorites, it all begins in the oven. Get inspired live every Friday, only on Espresso on S3. This is Bake That Thing.
You can become a victim of a legal problem. Wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day.